salt of the streets, coming at you every week with this food for thought. Hope you ready to eat. With everything going on in this nation, we need some information, and that's why salt need to be stationed in your rotation. With real talking, real topics, real people, real problems. Think we need some help to solve them, and leave it up to Colin and the Donovan, cause that's what's that? Let's get ready. Welcome to the salt of the streets, coming at you every week with this food for thought. Hope you ready to eat. With everything going on in this nation, we need some information, and that's why salt need to be stationed in your rotation. With real talking, real topics, real people, real problems. Think we need some help to solve them, and leave it up to Colin and the Donovan, cause that's what's that? Let's get ready. Welcome to the salt of the streets, coming at you every week with this food for thought. Hope you ready to eat. With everything going on in this nation, we need some information, and that's why salt need to be stationed in your rotation. With real talking, real topics, real people, real problems. Think we need some help to solve them, and leave it up to Colin and the Donovan, cause that's what's that? Let's get ready. Welcome to the salt of the streets, coming at you every week with this food for thought. Hope you ready to eat. With everything going on in this nation, we need some information, and that's why salt need to be stationed in your rotation. With real talking, real topics, real people, real problems. Think we need some help to solve them, and leave it up to Colin and the Donovan, cause that's what's that? Let's get ready. Welcome to the salt of the streets, coming at you every week with this food for thought. Hope you ready to eat. With everything going on in this nation, we need some information, and that's why salt need to be stationed in your rotation. With real talking, real topics, real people, real problems. Think we need some help to solve them, and leave it up to Colin and the Donovan, cause that's what's that? Let's get ready. And we're back to Salt to the Streets podcast. Social and political commentary. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, right? That's always and forever. That's right. Salt to the Streets. Another fantastic episode. Everyday Normal Person's podcast. Salt to the Streets. Upper left or the upper left? Just upper left. Welcome to the Salt of the Streets, coming at you every week with this food for thought. Hope you ready to eat. With everything going on in this nation, we need some information, and that's why Salt need to be stationed in your rotation. With real talking, real topics, real people, real problems. Think we need some help to solve them, and leave it up to Colin and the Donovan, cause that's what's that? Oh, let's get ready. And we're back to Salt to the Streets podcast. Social and political commentary. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, right? That's always and forever. That's right. Salt to the Streets. Another fantastic episode. Everyday Normal Person's podcast. Salt to the Streets. Upper left or the upper left? Just upper left. Welcome to the Salt of the Streets, coming at you every week with this food for thought. Hope you ready to eat. With everything going on in this nation, we need some information, and that's why Salt need to be stationed in your rotation. With real talking, real topics, real people, real problems. Think we need some help to solve them, and leave it up to Colin and the Donovan, cause that's what's that? Oh, let's get ready. And we're back to Salt to the Streets podcast. Social and political commentary. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, right? That's always and forever. That's right. Salt to the Streets. Another fantastic episode. Everyday Normal Person's podcast. Salt to the Streets. Upper left or the upper left? Just upper left. Welcome to the Salt of the Streets, coming at you every week with this food for thought. Hope you ready to eat. With everything going on in this nation, we need some information, and that's why Salt need to be stationed in your rotation. With real talking, real topics, real people, real problems. Think we need some help to solve them, and leave it up to Colin and the Donovan, cause that's what's that? Oh, let's get ready. And we're back to Salt to the Streets podcast. Social and political commentary. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, right? That's always and forever. That's right.
And just like a red, white, and blue phoenix rising from the ashes of political bipartisanship, we are back to Salt to the Streets podcast.
This is Saturday, September 25th, 1:21 p.m., episode 114.
And welcome back, everybody, to the Salty Streets podcast, your one and only source for all these social... Oh, my God, I can't... Sorry. I was trying not to cough there for a second. Let's do that one more time.
COVID.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Salty Streets podcast, your one and only source for all the social and political commentary that you can handle, including... Oh, my God, this is just not working out today.
You got this.
I'm just going to have to read the script, bro. But anyways... Welcome back, everybody, one more time to the Salt the Streets podcast, your one and only source for social and political commentary on weekly news, pop culture, and sports, all built from the ground up for people like you and me, the everyday normal person. So come down and join us as we discuss life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and continue our endless endeavor to bridge the gap between people and information. We've had some internet issues between the pre-show and here. We're all back now. My mind's getting back in the game. Welcome aboard. I am Colin.
And I am Donovan.
And what is coming up on this week's show? We've got some COVID updates. We've got some General Milley topics. We've got the budget and the government shutdown possibly. We've got the southern border crisis. It's going to be a big old grab bag. We've got the
AUKUS treaty.
The AUKUS treaty, the Australia, UK, US treaty, where people are getting nuclear submarines and France is pissed off. So it's going to be a good, solid grab baggy show. We're going to get into a lot of stuff, and I have faith we're going to hit all those topics that I just said.
I think we can do it.
I think we can do it. So we kind of got cut off on the pre-show, obviously. So I wanted to ask you just right at the get-go.
Anything, Colin.
We've been gone for 2 weeks. I had an eye injury in between now and then. I had a infected corneal ulcer, which was really shitty. I don't suggest it, you know. Yeah, it sounds pretty sexy, doesn't it? So I was sporting an eye patch for a while, hiding out in the dark. But I wanted to ask you, like, what'd you get up to last weekend?
Last weekend, Jordan had some cake jobs. Shout out Leggings and Aprons if you're in the area and need any cakes.
That's right, Leggings and Aprons on Instagram and all the socials.
And all the things, yeah. She told me that she was thinking of switching to JP Bakery. She found somebody else that I think was like icing and aprons or something. So she was like, so I'm going to move away from that. But it's business conversations. You don't need to know about that shit. But if
all you need to know is she's slaying the cake game.
Yeah, she did. Yeah, she did like a frozen cake last week, and the frozen cake I think was like my favorite one that I've seen. So she's doing all kinds of stuff. That was ridiculous, dude. Yeah, check out Leggings and Aprons. She's doing some stuff. So she delivered. She did some cake jobs. So we didn't do anything on Saturday, and then on Sunday football all day football. So
fantasy has not been nice to me
I have
so far.
One win over 2 weeks and 4 teams.
Okay, good. I don't feel so bad now.
Yeah.
Because I only have one team, and I have 2 losses at this point. I gave up watching the end of last week's game because it looked like I was going to win. It was going to be great. And all of a sudden, I think Aaron Rodgers lost a couple points, and I lost my lead. I lost by like a point or two. I was so, I'd rather lose now at the beginning. Honestly, because I have a tendency to go in hot and start getting W's right off the gate and then fall right off. So I have a feeling this year is going to be different.
Yeah, no, you can come back. There's still lots of time, so I'm not deterred by it.
Yeah. I'm liking the new app though, man. It's great.
Yes. Yeah, Sleeper's legit, not an ad. Sleeper's has definitely been legit. Big fan of that app. I still have 2 leagues that are on ESPN, which sucks really bad because I would rather just all be on Sleeper because having to think about 2 different apps and everything.
Yeah, that's got to be a pain in the ass.
Weak as fuck. Yeah.
Especially when you got all the different leagues and stuff that you're in,
Yes, and our league is the only one that does the fab budgets with the dollars instead of the waiver order. And so my 3 other leagues are all waiver order, so I also have to deal with that and the fab thing.
So
it's very
much
complicated.
management.
Yeah, I'm not a... You know what, Chloe? I'm not trying to kick you, but you're laying right under my feet, so I don't know what to say.
She's used to it. She hangs out there all the time.
Yeah, so it wasn't bad. Seahawks lost last week to the Titans at very end. In Seahawks fashion, that's how they like to do things. So
it's pretty upsetting.
Yeah, no, it was good. It was very chill last weekend. We went to a park. What park did we go to last weekend? Oh, we went to
was it that park where like somebody died?
Evergreen Park.
Somebody got shot or something like that near that? No?
What?
No, that must have been somebody else was telling me. There was another park in Bremerton, I think in West Bremerton. There was like a shooting or something like that. Yeah, like last week.
Not when we were there.
That's good.
Yeah, no, so it was a good time. We just chilled. I feel like I definitely took Dax to do something on Saturday to like get out of Jordan's hair, but I don't remember what we did.
So. Just cruising around probably.
Yeah.
Last weekend was the storm, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah,
Friday,
that's right.
Friday evening there was a storm.
I was super jazzed about it because the sun went away for a little while.
Mm-hmm.
The sun is still a problem for my eye lately, and I was loving the overcast and the rain. And I was like, oh, this is sweet. I can actually like be outside and not want to tear my eyeball out.
Yeah, we never talk about like old men. I mean, there was a definite shift to fall.
Oh, dude,
the weather has definitely taken its turn. Yeah, no, it's a hard shift to fall. So.
Carolina picked up an entire case, like the 24, I think a 24 pack of the bottles of the Elysian pumpkin beers, and on top of that, another 4-pack of another, kind of random microbrewery, pumpkin beers. So we have all the pumpkin beers ever made at any point in time, she said she almost picked up a case of Oktoberfest when she was there too, and I cried because she didn't, because obviously Oktoberfest is good. And you're gonna find out, because ask me what I did last weekend.
What did you do last week?
So, I've just been dying to tell this story. So last Saturday we hooked up with Jake Morgan before they went out of town.
Western Red.
At Western Red Brewing, and just were there. You know,
did you
Kevin
drink
was
all
nice.
the beers?
I drank all the beers. I drank all the beers. I got like I don't know, some kind of random pale ale when I first got there, because the sign of like what beers are on tap and stuff like that. There's a couple locations, but the main one right by the registry has this big light that hangs down right underneath of it. And the very, very bottom of the list was an Oktoberfest. And since I was like glaring and shit, I couldn't really see it. And so I totally missed it. And so I sat down after getting the beer, and Jake's got Oktoberfest, and like, I can't remember what Carolina got right away. I think just a single buck IPA. And I was like, you got Oktoberfest, bro? I didn't even see that on the list. So I had four more Oktoberfests after that pale ale, because Carolina was like, you're hurting right now. You can't drive at night anyway, so feel free, go to town.
Rifle them.
Yeah, buddy. So I was throwing them back. We were laughing, telling stories, kind of, laying out some plans and stuff for like their Halloween party coming up. Had a blast, and then I got a growler of Oktoberfest on the way out to bring home, and Carolina and I finished that Saturday night.
Yeah.
So I had 5 beers and then had half of a growler, and I probably chiefed the growler a lot too. I'm not gonna lie, but I came back, and I've been getting a little bit more into this Twitch world recently, trying to like feel it out and see what's going on. And I spent all night in one of Carolina's friends' Twitches, and then did this after party thing on the Discord, which we should give another shout out to our now live Patreon and our Discord server and all that stuff, because we're going to be doing this stuff real soon. But went to this Discord after party with a bunch of people that I didn't know. Carolina came, and so everybody's just in there on mic and camera, and everybody's just sitting there talking shit, taking shots, telling stories. We talked politics. We had a really fucking good time. But boy, did I get just white girl wasted, dude. It was
white girl wasted.
By the end of it, I just kind of ghosted out, because I was sitting in the chair and I was like, I'm going to pass out in this chair. And so I need to end this. It was like 4:30 in the morning, and they were still rolling.
On Sunday?
And still going on Saturday.
No,
Sunday morning.
So I'm at the gym.
You're at the gym
I'm
lifting?
actively at the gym.
And I am drinking still from the night before.
Last Sunday, I did, just to compare what we were both doing at 4:30, right? Last Sunday, I did an hour and 30-minute core workout that had me hurting until Wednesday.
I was doing bicep curls that had me hurting until Wednesday.
Oh, my God. That is so fucking funny.
Oh, man.
If I would have known, I would have been talking to you.
Bro, that's
hilarious.
Yeah, there was a lot of bad decisions made that night, man.
God.
It took me all week to kind of recover from that. I'm too
you
old
guys
for
are
that
crazy.
Shit, bro.
You
old
guys
for that
are
shit.
crazy.
Trying to take advantage, we don't have the kids. Let's be young and do these things. And oh man, my body feels it, bro. But
Jordan asked me about.
It was fun.
Jordan asked me about going to a Halloween party, and I was like, I don't know, like that's just not really me. Like I just don't really want to do that. Like I got to go to work the next day and like the gym and stuff, and like I would rather do this and blah blah blah. And you're like, oh no, I was up until 4:30 in a Discord server, just fucking chatting on my computer with fucking random individuals,
with
like
random people throwing back beers, taking shots. Oh man,
what is this world that we're living in? You guys are crazy.
It's a wild world, buddy. It is a wild world. But yeah, I just had to, cause I was like, there was a point at which I was crawling into bed at like, 4:30 or something like that, and I was just like, what did I just do to myself?
Absurd.
This is gonna take me forever. What did I do?
Last Saturday, I remember now, we dropped off one of those cakes, and that's why we didn't meet you guys. It's because if we weren't doing that, we might have met you guys at the brewery and hung out for a little bit. But yeah, we dropped off a cake in Belfair, and it was at like a family party. So Jordan made a tiramisu dinosaur-themed cake.
Oh.
It was ridiculously delicious. Yeah. So we drove out to Belfair, to drop off this cake, and 4 minutes before we got to Belfair State Park was when it was pissing rain.
Dude,
absolutely dumping. Yeah, and so they actually had a covered area that we did the party in, but most of the people we were there with got rained out of their campsites, like all their shit. Jordan's parents, like Leif, all of his clothes were soaked and stuff like that. It was a bad time. Bad news. Yeah, I haven't been
tough
camping.
weekend to do that.
I haven't been camping in rain like that since I was a kid, and I remember then we did not get rained out, but many other people we were with. Yeah. If you did not set up your tent in the right spot, you got fucked. You got
wrecked.
Yeah, I remember having clothes ruined by them like touching the sides of the tent, you know, when you camp out. So like I'm very nervous about having wet clothes and like wet things. Like I'm very careful about that type of shit because
that's how you die, bro.
It's a bad time, you know. That's a real bad time. If we used to camp like in Moses Lake and stuff like that, you know, if you're 4 hours from home, you can't just drive home and get new clothes, you know. Like, and it's not like you're going to go to the store and spend fucking $100 on another, because we used to camp it for like 2 weeks at a time, you know. So you're not going to go out there and spend $100 on 2 weeks worth of clothes. You got to keep your shit legit, you know. Yeah. So
that's funny.
Jordan's never done anything like that, so there's like, I don't know. I forget when we go camping. There's the stuff that you have to like remind people of. It's weird.
Yeah, because unless you're one of those people that is like doing it all the time or every single year religiously, you know. Like I have a lot of high, how would I phrase that? Like high reward, high consequence type of hiking situations when I go hunting and stuff. Yeah. And like, yeah, dude, no, you're 10 miles away from a vehicle. You need to go in ready for whatever you might run into. Right. While simultaneously trying to bring in as little as possible. So everything is very precious. But unless you have that like mindset, most people don't think about that kind of stuff. It's like, oh yeah, whatever, I can. No, dude, you can't. It's 10 hours away that way, and an entire day on your hoofing it out. Right. Like that's a tough deal, man. But yeah, it was. We haven't had a storm. We haven't had like rain in a long time.
It's been very dry this summer.
And
very dry.
That thing came with vengeance, bro.
It was nice, bro.
It was nice. I didn't hate it. I got to actually mow my lawn again because all that water got into the grass, made everything green again. It was actually really nice to have.
And Dax really wants to play in the snow, so
I think we're gonna get some snow this year.
We're definitely gonna get snow this year. The time is now. So keep telling him.
Oh, excuse me. I just got a bunch of crap running in my throat today.
So this week we got lots of good things going on. We are going to be talking about, obviously, the crisis at the border, like Colin said. Yeah. We are going to be talking about some COVID updates, which we can probably do now. Because those are relatively small, I think, or quicker. The border crisis is going to be the biggest topic, I think. General Milley, and then we have obviously the AUKUS treaty, which is the Australia, UK, United States
badass,
treaty.
Right? As far as treaties goes, you know. The AUKUS treaty.
I heard about it on the radio, and I hit you up, and I told you my immediate concern is what they're not telling us. Like, they're like, oh, it's about submarines. And I'm okay, what other type of military technologies are you also getting, though? Because I have a hard time, just me, believing that it's just submarines. I don't know that.
Because it's definitely not. There's a whole package of things, including like cybersecurity and all manner of stuff.
So in this time when Australia is like, oh, you need to download this app on your phone so that when we call you, you can take a picture of yourself so we can make sure that you're in the location you're supposed to be in, because that's actually happening right now. Yep. That's a real thing. In a world where that's existing, I'm like, well, they probably want to control their people even a little bit more if they can, And America seems to be on kind of the cutting edge of people controlling cybersecurity or, infiltration of knowledge technology. So,
I mean, let's face it. China kind of like cornered the market on it, but they used our technology.
China's number one for sure, and because they keep so much stuff secret now,
But it was all from the tech. I don't know. How would you call that? Like, what do you call that when they're stealing intellectual property? That type of deal. Like in
corporate espionage.
Corporate espionage. That's why they can do it and implement it over there, because they piggybacked everything over the last, 2 decades, since we had the open China policy. It's been a very interesting thing. They just aren't that scared to use it.
Fuck the CCP.
And I don't think Australia is going to be that scared to use it. But
obviously not.
And the nuclear-powered submarines is not something to just gloss over either.
Right.
Like, that's still a big deal, too. I mean, I don't know if Ozzy's got to have nukes, right? As part of like the Western
I would
powers.
assume so.
I need to look that up.
I don't know.
But nuclear-powered submarines still, I mean, that's a big deal.
There's only a handful of countries
Yeah.
with nuclear capabilities.
Yeah.
So at least with
and we're
like
real picky about who
nuclear-
gets allowed to come back into
Yeah.
that club, you know. Iran, no, you're not allowed in. China, well, you're already in, so we can't do nothing about it. But
Right.
like when new people try to come up on the block and be like, yeah, we want nuclear power, we're like, nah, you don't need
Yeah,
that.
if
you
you
don't
figured
need
it
that.
out in relatively short time from when we figured it out, we couldn't really do anything about it, you know?
Yeah,
For some reason now, we're allowed to. I don't
understand
that kind of thing always baffles me when it comes up. Is like, why are we allowed to tell you that you can or cannot progress with your science? Because it's not like, especially in the case of Iran, and now we're talking about this,
You're right.
especially in the case of, like, it's not like they couldn't do it. It's just a matter of enriching uranium to the level that it could be used for a pump.
Oh,
So
yeah.
it's like, it's not like you don't even have the capability. You just can't make one tomorrow
Yeah.
because you have to enrich the uranium first. Like, what the fuck is that? That
Yeah.
doesn't. Are we really supposed to assume that they don't already have some somewhere? You know,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah, because it's been a while since I really looked into that, but you know, there was a while there where everybody was watching it and their level of enrichment and stuff like that.
they were telling
They're
us they were
breaking the
going up.
treaty.
Yeah,
and they were
we're
like
going
doing
to keep
that.
going because fuck you guys.
Yeah, and they at this point they have to. At
Well,
this
and right
point.
now I think we're in the 7th round of talks.
Oh, yeah,
like
with the-
third-party talks with the Iranians about the nuclear deal,
Yeah.
and there doesn't seem to be
any
a
coverage
whole
of
lot
it.
of. Well, not too much coverage. I think the only reason I know that is because of the press briefings, because they talk about it, you know, and people ask Jen Psaki about it. But no, and if there isn't coverage of it in the mainstream, then there obviously isn't very much progress going on. You know,
nothing to really report, if you will.
the amount of leaks that come out of the administration is, I mean, it's atrocious. You know, their whole,
Leaky.
I mean, we'll talk about like the General Milley book. I mean, the whole book written just like the one during Donald Trump that I'm sure is going to be off of largely not uncorroborated but unnamed sources, anonymous sources. You know, the
Yeah.
amount of stories that are written off of someone with knowledge of the situation said this. Like, that's all well and good, and it's like the story is very salacious, so it's very interesting to read. And like, you know, if that were true, then it would be very interesting. But because we have no idea of the credibility of this person, other than this journalist saying, "Believe me, but I can't tell you who they are."
Exactly.
When we walk around every day saying you can't believe anything the media says, I don't know why. I struggle to give anything too much credence, but I also, at my core, would like to believe. Why would you say something like this if it wasn't true?
Yeah.
You know, why would you
so
just
off the wall? It's like it has to be. But
yeah.
and we'll get more into that when we start talking about the Milley stuff.
And
But
I
yeah,
mean,
there's
just as a
lot
general,
of,
I didn't mean that specifically. I mean, as a general theme, any of these stories that come out that are made by uncorroborated sources, I don't. Why would someone say something so salacious if it wasn't true? Like, why would you?
with like
say, you know,
with the border crisis stuff, you know, all the stories that are coming out, it's like, you know, from a source who is being, you know, anonymous because he's not authorized to speak on this thing. It's like I understand that, but how am I supposed to trust you after what you've put us through over the last decade? How am I supposed to trust that you're not full of bullshit right now? Every single story is an unnamed source familiar with, or an anonymous source who, you know, has direct knowledge of. It's like, how is that sourcing?
Right.
I don't understand. Yeah, and that's going to come up, I think, a lot today with all the things we talk about.
And it's something I think we could bear to pay more attention to when we bring up articles. You know, because we only, as people who are at this point independent journalists. You know what I'm saying? We don't have anybody working for us. We also have full-time jobs, so we can't go to Washington, D.C. and investigate these things ourselves, right? We have to rely on the reporting of these big news agencies. There's only so much that we can. Same thing with Tim Pool, right? There's only so much that you can do in reporting these things. But
the best way, like, for us to do it is to find a story, find as many sources talking about that story as possible from all different political persuasions, small media, major media, and then taking official statements from White Houses and things like that, and government sources, and then kind of amalgamating
which
them
is
all
what we
together.
do in the background, you know? And
that's what we do every day of our lives.
Right, and it's why most of the videos and the clips and stuff that we play here are from the press briefings, because it's easier. The best way is to take what they're saying and then use everything that we've read to kind of go back with, well, this is what's actually happening.
Yeah.
So.
It's a weird balance because, again, there's that trust issue every time. But what else are you going to do without having the millions and millions of dollars in funding to be able to hire people to do stuff like that on the ground, individual investigative reporting, and it's everybody can just do what they can.
I think this is a great jumping off point actually to talk about COVID, right?
Yeah.
Because just like in journalism, in COVID-19 and so much was going on, there are these enormous administrative bodies that are standing behind this, the CDC, the FDA, things like that. When I was talking to my uncle the other day, he was talking about the FDA and was saying the FDA has no incentive to deceive anybody. There's which is true.
It's true.
Grant that there is no incentive for the FDA to deceive anybody. My issue with the FDA is the insane amount of drugs and treatments and things like that get approved, and we only find out 10 years later, oh, this gives you cancer. Like fucking Chantix. All of the Chantix is getting pulled off the shelf right now. I'm telling people, if you're already taking it, you have to continue to take it because, and this is so random, right? When I listen to the Shane show, do you remember the Shane show?
Day, dude.
Back in the day.
Yeah.
Shane Powers was taking Chantix.
Yeah, and what was Chantix for?
Yeah,
it was
quit smoking.
Okay.
It's a drug to help you quit smoking. Mm-hmm. It made him fucking crazy.
Yeah.
It made him absolutely crazy. And that's very common. The side effects from Chantix are insane.
Yeah.
And so now we're to find out that actually it can give you cancer also. And so again, just like the vaginal meshes that I always bring up, because those, and it's funny, right? But those are the commercials that we see all the time, because these are the things that impact enormous amounts of people that get them, and they think that they're fine. And not just vaginal mesh, but the hernia mesh, all that stuff, right? But those ones are very common.
There was the HPV vaccine too.
Yes,
there was fallouts with that. I forget what that was called.
Yeah, well, we just talked about all of the different drug manufacturers, that the multi-billion-dollar lawsuit over opioids.
Gardasil, that's what it was.
Oh, the multi-billion-dollar lawsuit over opioids.
Oh yeah.
I mean that's.
And it's not
that all happened.
And it's not even just opioids. Like when you start looking into all the various lawsuits of these big pharma companies and stuff, it's for a ton of shit.
Right.
And it has been, these lawsuits are on record going back to when they're first putting out all the different drugs, man.
That's the one earlier this week from Pfizer.
Yeah, and he's learning about a case study in a class that is about something totally different, but it's still the same company.
It's happening all the time. And so I was also asking my uncle about the proprietary coating right on the outside of the mRNA vaccine. And he was like, well, it is proprietary to the point that the companies aren't publicly released. Well, the FDA knows what the formula is. That's all fucking well and good, but the same thing applies then, that I don't necessarily trust this administrative body, that I don't not consume things that aren't FDA approved, right? I don't subscribe my whole life to what the FDA is telling me to do, and part of the reason is because there's shit like vitamins and whatnot, supplements that aren't FDA approved, that are not regulated, things that should be regulated that are not regulated, things like kratom that they are trying to regulate that shouldn't be regulated, cannabis, all kinds of things.
Did you hear about the latest one, that NAC, the NAC?
Right.
I started looking into that today, and I'm like, holy shit, yeah, it was a supplement. Now it's technically a drug, and you can't. I can still find it online certain places, but it's so weird that they're going into these trial things, and we could talk about that in depth more. I got some pages pulled up, but
and
it's weird that I don't trust them to be doing things like this, because there's so much evidence all around of them making what I would say are untrustworthy decisions.
Right.
And it does not help when it's well, it's the FDA, you should trust them. I don't. That's the problem.
I appreciate that it is a relatively independent body in the way that people are not appointed at the FDA. From what I understand, people work at the FDA, and so the president is not picking who is the head of the FDA. From what I understand.
Yeah, I think it's kind of a more internal selection process.
Right.
I think as far as executive agencies and stuff, they have a little bit more independence on who's running and who's not. But again, I'm not an expert on the makeup of the FDA structure.
My only point, and just like I was talking about the last time we were here, right? I don't trust really any government organization.
Yeah.
And so I'm not going to just believe this because, well, the FDA has the information, and so if it was harmful in some way, then we would know about it. I don't necessarily believe that, because there are so many things that are continued to be found harmful afterwards, right?
Yeah.
And that's where my long-term question comes in, right? So my uncle's response to this was totally reasonable. Most people, a lot of people want long-term data because COVID is killing more people. And whatever. Because COVID is killing more people than the vaccine is, because people aren't necessarily dying from the vaccine, more research and time is being put into what are the long-term effects of COVID, not what are the long-term effects of the vaccine.
Yeah.
Which I understand, but again, I don't agree with, because if we're asking you to inject something in your body,
if we're mandating it,
and then continue to get boosters months and months and months afterwards, right?
Yep.
And this right now
against FDA,
right.
against their advisory
We're going to
board.
continue to ask you to get boosters. I think that it is just as important that I understand what the long-term effects of that are if I'm going to not only get it 1 time, 2 times maybe, because if you have the Pfizer or the Moderna, right, but now 3 times, maybe 4 times, 5 times, maybe every year if it's now going to be doing, the same thing as the flu, if we're going to have to continue to get different vaccines for it every single year. I think that it's important and reasonable for me to want to know what the long-term effects of that are, you know?
That seems very reasonable,
Like
you'd think, right?
And so I just don't... I completely understand everything that he said, and it all makes sense.
Yep.
But just like... I think it was kind of consistent with what we've been talking about. And I'm not trying to mischaracterize anything, but like there's just more there that's not being talked about that I don't agree with. There are things being left out here that I think need to not be left out.
Yeah, because it's when you think about, like, if you think of the path of studying the long-term effects of COVID over the long-term effects of the vaccine, you would kind of be assuming that if you're more interested in the long-term effects of, long COVID or what happens to you 10 years down the road, once you run through a cycle of COVID and you recover and everything's fine, but what does that look like on your body 10 years from now? If that's the track you're going to take versus studying the long term of the vaccine, does that not indicate that your long-term goal is essentially more of like everyone is going to be eventually getting this, so we need to understand that first over the long-term effects of the vaccine? But we're not walking down that road. We're not talking herd immunity. We're not talking about that. We're talking about everybody getting vaccinated, period, full stop. You have to do it.
Right.
And so at that point, why would your shift not be, if that's what you're going to force people to do, and so when you're not doing that, it feels very, the red flags start to go up. It's like, well, that doesn't make sense. Why are we studying that? If our path is going to be the vaccination, all the research should be on that. Well, equal amounts of research probably be done on both.
We should.
That would be the best, most logical way for me.
The administration loves multi-pronged approaches.
Yes.
So there should be, at the very least, a 3-pronged approach in which we are looking actively at the long-term effects of COVID, the long-term effects of the vaccine, and then also how long you're good with your antibodies once you've had COVID. Because like you said, this is the third arm that people want to ignore. It's the third nipple in your armpit that people don't want to talk about. The ugly third nipple that begs to be ignored.
Don't talk shit about my cute little third nipple.
So and that concerns me, right? And I asked my uncle about it right as we were leaving, so he did not get to finish his thought, right? I asked about long-term effects, like people who've had it, like that's not being talked about. So I'm certainly not looking to get the vaccine right now, I said, because certainly at this point, there's no point, And if we're talking about me,
brother just got COVID, bro,
and my wife and my kid, so my kid's not even 3 years old now. And now we're talking about giving him a vaccine to do that. And he was like, well, he's good for at least a year, and stuff like that. And then we had to get up and leave. And so, again, that's all well and good, but I don't.
Yeah.
He's a child, and children are not the same as adults. They're not just tiny adults.
Yeah, your whole body is different.
It doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
And so I am just extremely hesitant, even more hesitant than myself. I would sooner get the vaccine than I would give it to my son.
Yeah, because you're willing to take the unknown
Do you know
risk.
what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But I don't know, and no one can tell me what is going to happen when a 3-year-old gets it and then they grow up to be 18 years old, and what the possible long-term effects were from getting the COVID-19 vaccines. No one knows yet.
Nope.
No one knows.
No
and
one
I
knows.
don't think that's not even I don't think, I know for certain that is not an unreasonable question. What is going to happen to him if he gets the COVID-19 vaccine while he is going through being a toddler, while he is going through elementary school, through puberty, into adulthood?
Yep.
What is going to happen?
You have
How
no
is it
idea.
going to affect those things?
Yep.
No one knows. What if he doesn't go through puberty? I'm not trying to fearmonger. I'm not trying to just be like, what about this and this and this? I'm like,
Yeah.
but these things, and as a parent, and I'm going to stop qualifying what I'm saying, but these are the things that concerns me, you know?
Well, and that makes sense because what you're essentially doing is just pointing out a few of the unknowns. When somebody says, I am concerned about possible long-term effects because we have no idea what they may or may not be, and nobody can tell you that at this point because there's no data on it because this is real-time stuff.
You can say there's
So-
no evidence of that.
Yeah.
Great.
Great. There is no evidence of that because we haven't gotten there yet. We don't have the ability to do a long-term study
Right.
yet. Some of them are in process. They are, but we're not 10 years later yet. This is not 2030 yet.
Right.
We don't have a decade worth of stats on this
We
stuff.
don't even have a breakthrough percentage for people with the vaccine.
No.
And that's
That-
he was also saying, he was like,
That's bothering me.
he said that he thinks that they're definitely collecting that data, but not releasing it. I was drinking, so I did not think at the time to ask, like, why wouldn't they be releasing that information other than to just try and protect the integrity of the vaccine and the campaign of continuing to get the vaccine, right? But even then, you have to, I don't know how you collect all of that data if people are not reporting all of the time. If you get it at home and you don't tell anybody about it, then you don't know.
Yeah.
You know, if you get the vaccine and you're like, I feel kind of weird, or maybe I was around somebody who did have COVID, so I decided to pick up a home test and I did it at home, and then you test positive. How do you know that? If you don't call, right?
Yep.
The only reason anybody knew is because I went to the hospital and got tested. That's
Yep.
the only reason anybody in the state knew. Because I told you, I got 3 phone calls and 2 text messages in different languages about trying to contact trace for the virus, right?
Yep.
So if you get it at home, then no one knows. And so, again, I'm not fear-mongering. And that's for YouTube, not for anybody else, right? This is for YouTube. I'm not fear-mongering. I'm not questioning. I'm asking a genuine question of how do we know that? You know, even if we are collecting that data, it's still only the data from people who are showing up at medical centers with COVID, right? The same thing with people who haven't been vaccinated with COVID. If you got COVID, right, and if you tested positive at home with a home test, you're not going to go to the doctor unless you need to go to the doctor. You've already had it. You're just, even if you hadn't already had it.
Yeah, I'm going to be more pissed off about, like, the 2-week quarantine and, like, trying to run my life while I have to stay in my house.
If I was able to have purchased an at-home test when I had COVID, I would not have gone to the doctor.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have called my doctor to say, hey, I just tested positive for COVID. I just wanted you guys to know.
Yeah, because you know the deal.
I would have stayed at home unless I needed to go to the doctor. The only reason I had a doctor's appointment anyway was because I thought I had a sinus infection before I knew about the COVID.
Yep.
That's the only reason I went to the doctor anyway. So I don't understand that. I don't get it. I don't understand
The demonization of asking a question that is perfectly reasonable and logical. I don't understand
like such
why
a valuable
we get pushback.
piece of information.
Yes,
that
we are not getting, and we've had so many problems with the integrity and we'll just say the integrity of the data that we've been able to collect, because it seems as if the one thing the government is supposed to be good at is collecting data and making policy decisions off of data.
Yeah.
I think that this last year has shown us that they are really bad at doing that on the fly. They're really bad at trying to responsibly track data to make informed decisions and inform the American populace based off of that data. If our entire tact throughout this process from the executive has been, if it was informational and, suggestions type of deals, like, hey, we're trying to look out for everybody. These are the numbers we're seeing. This is what we think people should be doing. Our scientists are saying this stuff. We're trying to be as transparent as possible so that people can be making the right decisions in their own lives.
Right.
But that's not the tack they've taken. They've taken the authoritarian tack where we tell you what to do because we know better than everyone else. And when something like this comes around where I say, why don't we have data on previous infections and antibody retainment and stuff like that? Why don't we have any of that data? I understand it's hard to get, but like you have some data out there. I know you do, but you're not sharing that for some reason. And when you already have an antitrust bias built into that particular agency because you've proven to the populace as a whole that your word cannot be trusted because you've backtracked on everything from the beginning.
Right.
You flip-flop and turn around, and I don't know how anybody can put their full trust in this system. And when you tell me to trust you, I don't trust you anymore. And if you continue that tact of just telling people what to do based off of your correct, it's the right way to do it because we have all the experts, we have all the great minds, it doesn't help your argument, doesn't help the vaccine hesitant, if you will, bring people onto your side. And obviously, we've talked about this before, the stance has gone from more just totalitarian, authoritarian stuff to like, you're now belittling people who are not joining your team and joining the side of what you want. And that makes it even worse.
The division we were talking about last week.
Yeah. You're sowing division through this stuff, which is making people not trust you even more.
Right.
And the moves that you make, some of the stuff we'll talk about, like you saw the Rochelle Walensky overruling the FDA's decision about boosters in specific demographics. I got the story. We could pull it up and read it if you would like.
Yeah, so because the last that I have here, right, is that the FDA had rejected boosters for everybody, but it said 65 and older and people with compromised immune systems should get boosters, right? So what is this story here?
So let me pull this story up here.
Yes.
Show you. Right now we have mics on. There we go, guys. From the New York Times, the CDC chief overrules agency panel and recommends Pfizer-BioNTech boosters for workers at risk. In a highly unusual decision, the CDC director, Rochelle Walensky, reversed a move by agency advisors and endorsed additional doses of the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine for healthcare workers, teachers, and other workers at risk. So that, we're talking about the group of people that are being subject to the federal mandates at this point.
Yes.
And they're seeing what else they can mandate, hence the boosters. And the CDC director, who is an appointed position, is now overruling the agency advisory board to make a decision like that. I would assume that the members that make up that advisory board are far and beyond more qualified than the CDC director Rachel Walensky. Rochelle Walensky. Yeah, but I don't know why she has the ability to do that. That seems wrong to me.
Because she's part of the executive branch.
Which is exactly, and that right there. Talk about trust and division in trust, if you will. You're now making it harder for more people that are already having a hard time trusting you. You're pushing them farther away from that. When an appointed official can overrule the rest of the advisory board because she thinks it's the right thing to do.
And I do just want to take 1 second and remind everybody that you can hear us talk about these things consistently when we are not live. We have our own personal social media. I am at Salt of the Street on Twitter and at alpaca_Donovan on Instagram. Colin is at Big Bird Offie on both of those things. You can find all this on saltofthestreets.com. Also, we have our Salt of the Streets Instagram at Salt of the Streets, our Facebook at Salt of the Streets, YouTube, obviously, where you're watching us now, Salt of the Streets. Thank you. Leave us a like and a comment. Share us. Subscribe. Do the notifications and everything because you can finally see them now. We also have a Patreon, finally. Patreon.com/Salt of the Streets. Let's take the shots real quick. Celebrate our Patreon.
Cheers, buddy. Congrats.
Not over the laptop, right?
Whoop, whoop.
Definitely more cinnamon in that one.
Woo, yeah. That's
Also
more of
wanted
like a fireball deal.
A little bit, yeah.
Like
I also wanted to remind everybody, obviously, Location Skate Shop. If you need a skateboard, I'm sorry, I wasn't trying to interrupt you.
No, you're
If
good.
you need a skate shop, if you need a skateboard, Location Skate Shop in downtown Bremerton. If you need a haircut, just like I do, I'm going to go see him, Swell Blended, next week. Instagram, Swell Blended, swellblended.com, schedule an appointment. Our wives are also extremely talented, and Lexi Kayo on Twitch. You can go there and you subscribe to her. My wife also making cakes, leggings, and aprons on Instagram. You can go there and find all that information. So
Great names, by the way.
absolutely fantastic names.
Yeah.
Yes.
I love it. So I have...
Cheers, William Wallace.
Cheers!
Cheers.
William Wallace.
Yes.
My island.
I have the YouTube up on my phone. I wasn't sure if you had the YouTube comments on your...
Yeah. I like to roll the... I log in on my personal account over here to monitor what everybody else is seeing to make sure. So the big date is coming up, I believe, before next episode, right? Today's the 25th.
For us?
Second, third. Actually, so it'll be a couple more episodes down. I didn't even look at the calendar. But October, for our state mandates, the vaccine mandates in Washington State, for all the workers on the state level, and then on down in various different demographics. All the vaccine mandate touches a lot of people in our state.
It's the 15th of October, right?
It's the 18th of October. I checked it out.
Thank you.
And that is coming online. And they're, at this point, seemingly maintaining the stance that, no, if you don't have that, you're gone. We're going to hold to it. We think a lot of people are going to do the... Yeah. And we think, as Jay Inslee would say, we think that, most people are going to be making the right decision. And I hate that qualifier. It's the right decision. It's the right decision. You say it's the right decision.
Yeah.
I think the unions, the massive amount of unions that are fighting the vaccine mandates right now should indicate to you, maybe that's not exactly the quote-unquote right decision. Maybe you should be letting people make their own decisions, since your own unions are pushing back to you. 800 or 600, I have to pull up that number again, members of city staff, or state staff.
The State Workers Union.
Have basically written out against this thing and are trying to file a lawsuit against it. Other various unions in the state are too. The firefighters, police unions all over the countries in the vaccine mandate states, New York particularly. So, and I wanted to ask you about this, essentially. With the looking at what a lot of these unions did when, like, the shutdowns were a deal, the lockdowns, the various mandates that have been put out for other things, they really had no issue with these things over the past, year or so, until it started to get into the vaccine mandates. Now all of a sudden, like, police unions are pushing back, firefighting unions are putting back, teachers unions have been fighting this thing for a long time, but we've talked about those. I don't really, at this point in my life, I don't give them any credit for trying to fight back now. I really don't. Because now it's like it's only affecting them, so now it's going to directly affect them. So now is their time to stand up and try to fight this in the courts and things like that. When, in my mind, especially the police unions, who were the ones enforcing all this bullshit throughout the last 20 months, I don't give a shit that you don't want to take this. You were forcing everybody inside their house. You were closing down churches and shit, dude.
Yeah.
I don't feel for you. I like the fact that they're pushing back and fighting against it, right? But it seems kind of like a hollow endeavor to me.
That's very interesting.
And I wanted to ask you about your thoughts about that type of deal.
I had not considered that. I think that's very interesting.
Okay.
It is. It's very interesting. Yeah, and I just hadn't really considered it. I've been trying really hard to give. We talked about this when we were camping, right? I've been trying really hard to give grace, right?
Yeah,
because and we talked about this last time we were here too, because this has been such a difficult time.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to admit something that I really didn't want to, because I was very embarrassed about it. Before I came here, I went to Bevmo to get this bottle of BSB, right? Or to Total Wine. I went to Total Wine, and I was sitting outside Total Wine. Total Wine is a smaller company, right? Very nervous.
Way better than Bevmo.
Way better. Very nervous. Going to the stores makes me very anxious anyway. I've decided since the last time we were here that I was done wearing masks in stores. I'm going to go into a store and not wear a mask. And if people ask me to wear a mask, then I will, because I'm not trying to cause a scene. I'm not trying to do whatever, right? And so for some reason this time I was just very, very anxious about it. Very anxious about going to the store. I don't know, should I wear a mask? Should I not wear a mask? And I'm like very torn. And then I became very frustrated with myself that I was so torn about it, And So I know I just went to the store. I didn't wear a mask. I just went to the store. No one said anything. I walked past several employees. It wasn't a deal, right? And then on my way here, I was thinking a lot about that. And how so many people are feeling that because they're afraid.
Social anxiety is at an all-time high.
And they're afraid. People are afraid, you know? And if you don't, I can see how if I looked less intimidating, I would probably come across more interactions, you know? I think there is a chance that a lot of people who work in regular retail stores would just rather not interact with me in that way because it could potentially be negative. If I'm in a bad mood and I decide to pop off, they probably don't want to deal with it, you know? So, and I'm sure that's across the board, but I mean especially for somebody who's bigger, whatever, you know? So I don't know, you know, I'm trying really hard to give grace because it's very difficult. People are very scared in many realms. People are scared, even myself, who's sitting here telling people, resist, do what you can. And we said it safely, so I don't feel like I'm being a hypocrite, you know, because I still did it. It's whatever, you know, but I sympathize very much with the anxiety and the borderline fear that goes in with that because you don't know what's going to happen. You know, you don't know. You never know. You never know. We are seeing actively videos of people being kept in their homes. Of people, I told you, there's videos of people like in Canada being tackled in stores by workers there because they won't wear masks. You know what I'm saying? You never know when you're going to have that staff in America that's like, we are just fucking sick of people doing this and we're going to do something about it. You know, the flight staff, the guy was irate, but then he gets duct taped to his chair, right?
It seems a little extreme.
He was irate. I'm not saying he was in no way correct, but he was duct taped to his chair, right? So you never know. And so I sympathize with that. I sympathize to a certain extent with police officers because you have a difficult job, but obviously my opinion's changed a lot on that since then. So
what was it? A year and a half ago, you were looking at trying to be a cop. Now, I don't think that's in the cards for you.
Yeah. So
I know a guy right now who is who just got hired on in the police force, just got through the academy, and I am super proud of him for doing that. He's a good human being, and I trust him to be a good police officer. Yeah, I do. I'm still leery of it. Apparently, my little thought had some waves here. Jordan says very super interesting take on that unions issue. William Wallace, as a former police officer, I find it interesting that Colin brought up that point. And I know Will and I have had conversations about this before because I'm, you know, as a former police officer, you know, I have my takes on the police force and cops and things like that. And I like to have conversations with somebody that are in that field or like, you know, if Officer Brian was closer to us and we had more time to, you know, hang out with him. Every
time I see him, I try and pick his brain about something. Not too obvious, you know.
Yeah, and it is definitely an interesting thing to think about. So, example, yesterday I had kind of a similar anxiety deal walking into a mechanic, right? I went in to go pick up one of my work trucks that was at the shop, and there's no signs anywhere, nothing like that, which is usually like if I walk to a gas station and they got a big sign right in front that says mask required, I'll put a mask on because obviously it's like, hey, they're telling me this is store policy. That's fine. I'm into it. That's fine.
Yes, because I went to the gas station after that, wore a mask in the gas station because it's a small individual-owned gas station, and he had signs on the door, so I put a mask on.
Yeah,
it's very, you know what I'm saying? It's very internally complicated.
It is very internally complicated. So I go to this mechanic and nothing there. It's a little industrial park thing. I open up the door and there's like an old lady there with a mask on. And so I opened the door and I saw that she was standing there. The proprietor of the thing was behind a desk, no mask on. Yeah. So I was like, okay, well, obviously this is okay. But I see old lady there, gray hair, picking up her car, wearing a mask. I'm like, and it's a tiny little room. I'm like, I shut the door and I turned around and put a mask on. And then I went back inside because and then as soon as she walked out the door, I dropped it down. Like there's so many more social calculations now that one is required to make as you move throughout your life. The smallest thing about going into a gas station to pick up a seltzer or picking something up from the mechanic or running in to grab a bottle at Total Wine now there's so much. You didn't used to think about it before. You just walked in, you took care. You were more concerned with what am I going to grab than like what am I going to do as I walk into this establishment. Yeah. What choices am I going to be trying to make in my mind? And that just the anxiety is, I mean, it's real. There's no way around it. If you're having to make those kind of calculations on a social level as you're actively interacting throughout your life, like most of the time when it comes to social interactions and choices people make, there's not a whole lot of forethought put through there. It's instinctual, it's natural. Some stranger at the store says what's up while you're there, or you're looking at beers or something, like, oh dude, that's a really good beer, and you're like, hey, yeah, I'll give it a try, whatever.
Right.
You know, you don't think about it, it's all natural. Now there's so much forethought put behind things, it really fucks with that anxiety trigger in a lot of people. Everybody's on edge, everybody's questioning everything, nobody knows what to do, nobody's liking what's going on.
Right.
It's a weird vibe to be going out there, man.
And a lot of that, I feel, it's difficult to get over, right? Especially because of the more, at least for me personally, I think for a lot of people, when you start to get into like that cycle of anxiety, you realize like this is definitely in part social engineering, like we were talking about, from the media coverage, from the way this has been covered, from the way that it's been talked about. Even my uncle was telling me when we were at dinner, he was like, things were left out. Like this has not been, you know, the division, the political side of this has been horrible, and it has made all of this 1,000 times more difficult. You know, if this disease, this virus was not politicized, the whole deal would have been way easier. You know, it would have, the rollout of everything, the vaccinations, everything would have been way easier, right? And that's not to be like, it's easier if you just comply, but like the legitimate divisiveness of it, of people who are in the White House now a year ago saying, I wouldn't get that vaccine if it came out under Trump, and then now saying, you have to get the vaccine or else we're going to take your job away, is a little bit jarring, you know? So
I remember us talking about this right when like COVID was first starting to hit the shores, and there was talk about like the case in California and like this kind of weird thing we had already seen what's been going on.
It was over Christmas of 2019 that we were like, yo, this shit in China is fucking wild, right?
Exactly. Watching people fall in the streets, you know. And
yes.
Like, and there's different theories about that kind of stuff too, by the way, which when you look at like viral evolutionary biology and stuff like that, can kind of make more sense. And
if you can't breathe for a week, you know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
You're walking around in China that's polluted as fuck anyway.
Exactly.
Like,
and then all of a sudden,
pass
boom.
out. Yeah.
Exactly.
I can see
so
how that would.
It definitely can make sense there. And then as, you know, virus, what is it? It's Timcast the other day, I want to say like Wednesday or Tuesday, had this amazing dude that was like, he's like super deep into like the science of RNA technology and how it works, and he's throwing out leukocytes and blah 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 and all these different things. A very, very interesting type of guy, and he kind of brought that stuff up, and it starts to make you think like about the evolution of a virus, because all viruses constantly evolve, just like all living things, and they just do it on a much faster scale because their lifespans are so much smaller. And like learning how certain viruses in the beginning are very, very deadly, they don't spread very easily, and they slowly evolve to be spread more and are less lethal, so that they're more virulent, you know, they can spread around the world and they do the whole thing and blah blah blah. Now we have a fucking pandemic. But I knew I was going to get sidetracked on this the science of the virus thing, but because we're talking about social anxiety, and damn it, I lost the point. I lost the plot on this one, buddy. But that's okay, because Will's got another comment I want to read. I'm about to brave a few airports in a few days. It should be interesting. Airports now are a very, very interesting deal. I have a wedding to go to next April. For Pup and Neil, and I'm concerned at where we're at now. Mandate-wise, requirement-wise, and the trend that has gotten us to where we're at now, and trying to foresee with the current trends what that might look like in April.
So
that's a tough
deal.
This
leads us to another good government point, right? Because earlier this week, Jen Psaki announced that there was going to be new requirements for international travel in the United States, right? So people flying in from the United States, excuse me, and I believe that I have a clip for this. Oh shit, I forgot to send you clips.
That's what the technical issues with the pre-show kind of threw everything off this morning.
I do have a clip for this somewhere. But sorry, the new policy in traveling internationally is if you are flying into the United States, you have to have either a vaccine passport, right, or proof of a negative test within 24 hours of departure, and also proof of purchase of another test to take once you've arrived in the United States.
That's interesting.
Yes.
That proof of purchase part for
Proof
the
of
next one
purchase, yeah,
is
you have to
very
have,
interesting. You remember when proof of purchase was like a cereal box thing growing up? You
Yeah.
send in your proof of purchase and you'll get this cheap little plastic toy from China.
Contact tracing. Regarding contact tracing for international travel, this is on the 20th. The CDC will order airlines to collect comprehensive contact information for people who are coming into the United States, and
And
that's how they're going to.
As far as like government
Comprehensive is
concerned in that industry, it's kind of weird how there is so much involvement with the federal government in all the airline industries because it's run through the FAA, which is a federal agency.
Yeah.
How they kind of get to set the vast majority of the regulations through that entire industry.
The
So when
airlines just
something,
have to bend to it.
yeah, and they just do it because without the federal government, I'm fairly sure that without the subsidies they get from the federal government, we would not have the airline system that we have now. It's very interesting.
So from what I understand, I've heard a couple of different accounts, but I've also heard kind of once you get through security, people don't really give a shit. Like once you're at the gates, you know, as far as masks go, I mean, like once you get into the actual gate and terminals and stuff like that, people don't really give a shit. It's kind of whatever, especially if you like have a drink or something like that. That's always the way to cheat it, you know,
Yeah.
just get a drink, you know, and just hold your drink. Like it feels dumb. Like,
Yeah.
this is a way to work
To
around
get
to
around
get your
it.
freedom, you know?
The only place it doesn't work is in Australia camps.
And that's
In the quarantine camps, you can't get away with that.
No.
You got a mask down.
But at
sit,
least
put
they're
the mask
open
up.
air, you know?
Exactly.
Or unless he's going to San Francisco,
Yep.
then also you don't have to do that either. That's one of the division points that I have. Because now I'm just starting to keep track almost of like all of the weird divisional things that happened over the 2 weeks. So I have
Yeah.
a list of like, let's see.
Oh, Carolina.
1, 2, 3, 4,
Lexi Cayo out
5.
there saying also a possible trip to Punta Cana for her dad's 70th birthday.
So-
there's a big thing going there, and
Which is gonna
Yep.
whatever they're requiring in Ecuador, you're gonna have to do there. And
Yep.
then if it's not a vaccine, you know,
Yeah.
because they may or may not. I don't know much about the Ecuadorian government or really anything at all. So I don't know how lenient they are, how whatever. But
Oh, yeah.
if they do or do not have a testing
regiment
like
if you will.
loophole is what I'm thinking,
Yeah.
but that's not option.
Yeah, and Punta Cana's in
then-
the DR, by the way. That's where we're looking at going.
Oh,
Over
okay.
the DR.
I just
Dominican
assumed
Republic.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Obviously, my South
Geography,
American
baby.
geography is not good. So,
Oh, Paul's here. I love Paul.
shout out.
He said feels dumb ? And I don't remember exactly what we were talking about at that point for the reference there, but I'm sure we'll get back around to it.
Oh, to be talking about ways to work around to get your freedoms in an airport.
Yeah.
You know, it feels dumb to be
Finding
having
loopholes
to
and-
do that. You
Yeah.
know, that's one of the things that I was talking to my uncle about as we were leaving. He's talking about, you know, the only way that we're going to get out of this is if people decide they're going to get vaccinated and wear their masks when they're, you know, at least when they're in confined places and things like that. So because people my age remember polio, he said, and they remember people who had just got back from World War II that had fought for these freedoms, you know, having things stamped
Yeah.
on their door telling them that they could not leave their house if they weren't going to get, the, you know,
Yeah,
this vaccine
polio
for
vaccine.
polio. So then I started to look into polio, right? So
Oh boy. Buckle up, baby.
so right, and I'm not going to argue history because it's neither here nor there. But polio, there is obviously not COVID, right?
yeah.
I don't know what the death rate of COVID was, but the rate at which it fucking maimed people and disabled them was pretty absurd, especially
Polio?
yeah,
Yeah.
especially children, right?
Yes.
So that's a huge factor in this. Polio largely affected children. COVID largely does not affect children.
Yeah.
And that's not me being like, well, kids are the only thing that matters. But kids can't generally make their own decisions, right?
Yeah.
Adults can't have decision-making skills. They
Yeah.
have legal autonomy. They have bodily autonomy.
So
They
they're
can do what
fundamentally
they want.
different.
They have different freedoms than a child does, right?
Yeah.
So I think there's a difference there when you're talking about a series of population of children that are being disabled permanently because adults are choosing to do one thing or another.
Mm-hmm.
And if that may be splitting hairs, I don't know, you know, because he was like, I understand, you know, the discussion of like people's freedoms and stuff like that. And that's when he started talking about polio. And he said, but the people who had just fought for these freedoms now are
Yep.
being kept in their own homes. And I understand it, right?
Yeah.
And I think the more I've thought about this, 'cause it was on like Wednesday, I think, the more I've thought about this, I think that that's just I think it may be one of those impasses that we were talking about. That like this is just a fundamental difference of like this.
Yeah.
The freedom to choose means more to me than this, because I think, and like we talked about last time, to me, the embracement of freedom is not safe. To be free is to understand and recognize you are not safe all of the time. You need to do what you can to mitigate danger and ensure your own safety within bounds of your freedom and other people's freedoms, and make sure things are good, right?
Yep. Mitigate risk. Life's all about mitigating risk.
And that, I think, like I said, I think it just may be one of those impasses that like this matters more to me, that you need to give people the freedom to choose and provide them with factual, true information, subdivision, sans politics, sans division, sans insanity, so they can know what is happening and make their own decisions. And if it's the right thing, then they're going to do, if it mitigates their risk, they're going to do it.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't, then they're not going to do it.
Yeah,
But
that's
you
kind of like the
can't-
approach tactic that I was just talking about. It's
Right.
like, if that was the approach of like, hey, everybody in the
Right,
populace,
right.
this is how we know that you can mitigate your risk. You know, go out and make good decisions, people. You know, be free, be great. Here's all the info. We're all doing this because we're the government. We believe this. We're gonna step behind our own deal, and we're gonna be right there on the front lines taking this stuff. Please try to follow our
guidance.
not guidance, but like take this, you know, look at the path
Example.
we're walking. Yeah, take our example. Thank
Yeah.
you. And so that's the struggle.
Right.
Um,
Because what you can't do is call yourself a free country and then give people false choices and censored information to try and lead them down the pathway that you want to.
Yeah.
That's not free. You cannot hold those two things at the same time. That's bullshit. You know, that is the definition of cognitive dissonance. You
Yeah.
cannot call yourself free while providing people false choices and limited information.
Yep.
You can't do it. That's not you must acknowledge that we are no longer a free populace if that is what the government is choosing to do, and that's what you're okay with doing. We're no longer a free populace. We are now guided by our government in the direction that they want, like a herd of cattle. Some are going to get away and do their own thing, and fuck them. You know, if we have a herd of 5,000 and we lose 20 on the way, that's just the cost of doing business. You know, some of the calves get trampled on the way there. It is what it is. That is not how this should go. This country is supposed to be free range, right?
Free range,
yeah,
baby.
That's not. Yeah.
you ever seen that movie Open Range
Yes.
with Kevin Costner and crap?
Cartoon movie?
No.
Then
It's a cowboy movie. Kevin Costner. I
Oh,
want to
no.
say. Robert Duvall. Robert Duvall?
Oh.
Probably.
Okay.
Great cowboy movie. But I like what Paul asked, you know, whose truth? And when we're talking about this, and like we were talking, I think probably before you jumped in here, Paul, about that kind of being the problem, is when the institutions and the agencies have eroded their social credit score, their trust. When people don't trust an institution or an agency, when they say here is the truth, and then you try to look at the data behind it, what's driving this stuff, if you can't trust at the end of the day that this is factually correct, because they're obviously hiding things, or they're omitting things, or they're purposely not reporting on something,
Doubling back on things.
yeah, like it's that trust is infringed upon. And then when somebody says, because we're in the area of post-truth,
Right.
We've been there since before COVID. I think we've known this for a long time. Personal truth has been a thing for longer than COVID has. And so when people start talking about truth and facts, if you will, it's 50-50 whether that actually is the case. I mean, 50-50 might be a little generous, but so that's like whose truth is the problem. That is exactly the problem, is
Right.
whose truth are you picking that up on? Are you only watching ONN and getting all of your information from, just categorize everything, right-wing sources? That's going to be your truth. That's the truth you're getting.
Right.
If you only watch MSNBC and CNN, you're getting that version of it. And then depending on which channels or which group you're listening to get your information, they have various other sources that they're pulling from that are backing up their truth. And that is the problem. We don't know who to trust anymore.
Right.
And do you just blindly trust the government? I would doubt that's a good idea. But I did want to bring up something that you were talking about earlier about
Yes.
polio, and how essentially everybody got the polio vaccine, and it was a great idea that everybody did.
Yes.
Like, if, when the mandates came out, it is a fundamentally different disease, the fundamentally different virus. And we use in contemporary times, basically most people's thing is like, well, if this was airborne Ebola,
Right.
there would be no question. Every person out there
I would
that
definitely be
hadn't
doing it.
already died from airborne Ebola would already have this shit, and there would be no questions. Nobody would be talking about something. But with the problems and trust we've had, looking at the data we have, and looking at what this thing is, there's a lot more room for that risk mitigation.
Right.
But that choice of mitigating our own risk is being removed from us every day, further and further and further.
And I am sympathetic to the argument that, because it crosses a very gray area that we've talked about a lot, of your freedoms extend up until the point that you are infringing on other people's freedoms, right? And if your choice to do something is putting somebody else in danger, right? I recognize that it's a gray area, but that's also where you talk about kind of the level of risk. You know what I'm saying? That's why it's important to provide, and that's why I was trying to I try and stray away from the term truth, right? Because it can go back and forth. This is my truth, people say. That's why I'm saying factual information. Provide people with numbers so that they know this is the rate at which people are getting COVID. If you are obese, this is the rate at which you're likely more to get it. If you have these other things, these increase your risk factor X percent. This makes it's this percent, it's this percent. Give people all of the information. Once the vaccine starts to come down, people are getting it. Listen, we're having breakthrough cases. It may be because people are hesitant to get it. It might be because it's evolving for one reason or another. But now we're at the point where this is the amount of breakthrough cases. So it's better if you get it, because it will help us get less breakthrough cases. It will help us whatever. But you need to just be providing all of the information so that you can make your own decision. Because I feel very strongly that if that had been done from the beginning, there would be much less concern here, much less division. There is going to continue to be people who don't believe you, who sow division and sow misinformation from the very beginning. That is definitely going to happen.
Yeah.
But if you are honest from the beginning, you know what I'm saying? You maintain that social, and I don't use the term social credit because that's very China, that's very communist.
It is.
Your legitimacy. You maintain your legitimacy. And if you lie consistently, like the Trump administration did, right? And now, like the same people who existed in that administration that have been carried over, right? So they still continue to. The Biden administration didn't get the reset that they were hoping for by maintaining Anthony Fauci, who had lied the most the whole time. Yeah, right. That's great. You removed the guy from the CDC who pretty much did the right thing, from what I understand, was a far less divisive figure than Anthony Fauci was. So,
what was his name?
But it was he had no hair and a white beard and glasses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
God, what was his name?
And he has since come out and been like, yo, we fucked up. Like, we did some things that were not correct.
Yeah. Redfield.
Yes. Thank you. But instead, they have hung their hat on Anthony Fauci and said, we will never fire Anthony Fauci. We will not do it. Even after he's been shown to perjure himself in front of Congress, he's been found to be lying numerous times. We found emails in his actual accounts that have PDFs of whatever the fuck that are named. You know what I'm talking about?
Research. Oh my God.
Gain of function research. PDF. That's the name of the PDF. And then he's saying, no, we never did that.
Not to mention reading Peter Daszak's 2020 opinion article at The Guardian talking about this too.
It just doesn't.
He's the dude that's doing it, and he's saying, this is what we're doing.
They did not get the reset that they needed, or that they could have had if they. Again, I understand maybe the concern of, well, if we bring in somebody else, then maybe he doesn't have the legitimacy. But the dude you have has already lost all legitimacy. Of it. So
he should have lost it in the 80s.
Yeah.
He should have been fired after everything was done in the 80s with the AIDS problem.
He didn't gain any by a new administration saying, no, we believe you.
Yeah.
Like that didn't, because
and I want
Biden was already such a divisive figure.
Just for a minute about the breakthrough cases, right?
Yes.
Because that is a big divisive issue right now with a lot of people who are like, well, why would I get the vaccine? There's breakthrough cases left and right here. For one, we don't have the stats on it, which is bad.
Right.
Because we should, right?
We only know the breakthrough hospitalizations and deaths.
Exactly. And I think there's a video we'll have to do for our first, well, actually, I'll just show you on Twitter later, about The View. When they were going to have Kamala Harris on The View, and there's 4 people on The View that are sitting there, the hosts, and they get like this thing over their mics and stuff. They're like, you guys need to go. We need to pull you off stage. 2 of them had to go backstage. They had just tested positive for COVID. And Kamala Harris was supposed to be coming on and blah, blah, blah.
Mid-show,
It was wild. But with the breakthrough cases, right?
Yes.
The deal with the vaccine was never that you're not going to get COVID.
No.
Actually, it was presented that way in a lot of times, but like that was never the actual deal with the vaccine. It was so that when and if you got COVID, the effects of that disease running through your body are going to be less damaging overall.
Yes.
It'll keep hospitalizations lower. It'll keep deaths lower. I don't like the people that try to make that disingenuous argument about like, well, the breakthrough cases, there's so many breakthrough cases now. Why do I even get the vaccine? I can understand that to a point, but at the same time, that was never the bill of goods that we were sold with the vaccine. I'm still a big proponent of the vaccine. I'm not a proponent about the mandates. I'm a huge proponent of natural immunity with prior infections. And I think those 2 things, the vaccine and prior infections, should be looked at together and held up together as ways to mitigate as much risk as you possibly can going forward. But the complete lack of support, I would say, for the previously infected really upsets people, and it just sows more divisiveness and trust again.
And I feel like if they were looked at together, right, especially because a lot of the information, the studies that we're seeing are not saying that if you have natural immunity, it's good forever, but that it's good for just longer than the vaccine is. If they're looked at together, you're going to likely convince more people who have prior infection to get the vaccine when that time period is over.
Yeah.
If they're saying we have determined that at 15 months, you have not enough antibodies to maintain immunization from getting the virus again. You could get it, and it could be bad. It could not. But if you get the vaccine, then it definitely won't be bad, because you'll have X amount of protection. It'll boost you this much, and you may even only need 1 shot because you already had the virus,
You're cruising. It's the flu shot type of mentality.
But when you stick with, like you're talking, let's not even talk about it. Stick with that idea of not addressing things.
People are smarter than that.
Yeah.
They see right through it. They know that there is something going on with if I get the flu before the flu shot that season comes out, odds are when the flu vaccine comes out, I've already had the flu, like taken a flu test or whatever and gotten through it. Odds are I'm not going to go get the flu vaccine that year because I'm good, and then at least from my experience, generally speaking, I am good at that point. And then if you do, that's whatever, But yeah, removing that whole thing and bastardizing it and saying that there's only one way to go here. There's only one road to hoe, and that's the vaccine. Vaccines are bust, you know what I mean? And that's it. Which the average person, understanding how they have lived their life and gotten sick over, different years and shit like that, know that that's not totally the case.
Right.
Especially when breakthrough cases are coming out more and more, especially more and more prevalent ones, because everybody in like the media and on, celebrity and stuff like that, they were the ones taking the vaccine selfies, blah, blah,
Chris
blah.
Rock.
And then, and then all of a sudden they get a breakthrough case.
People,
it's like, well, that's,
Antonio Brown
that was still a deal.
Yeah, Antonio Brown has COVID.
Antonio Brown does?
Mm-hmm.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Who's got Antonio Brown in the league?
I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure that he's vaccinated too. I'm pretty sure that Tampa Bay is one of the teams that's fully vaccinated. There are a couple of teams in the NFL that are 100% vaccinated, staff and players. So I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah,
it's very interesting. There's some things I want to talk to you about, like this list of the division continues.
Oh yeah,
is what I have, right? So there are a couple of things that I want to talk about because I think that it continues to remove credit from these. I don't want to say these people, but this group that largely consists of left-leaning celebrities, public figures, along with the government, right? Because they're bringing celebrities in. I want to take this moment because we talk about this pretty frequently. I want to take a moment just to remind everybody of our social media. I am at Salt of the Street on Twitter and at alpaca_Donovan on Instagram. Colin is at Big Bird Outfit on both those things. You can find all this on saltofthestreets.com. We also have our Instagram at Salt of the Streets, or YouTube, Salt of the Streets, Facebook, fuck Facebook at Salt of the Streets. We also have our Patreon at Salt of the Streets. You can go there, 5 different levels, support us. We value everybody who's done that. Thank you very much.
If you were to sign up for our Tier 4 Patreon account right now, we would be reading your executive producer credit right now.
Right now. Yes, the executive producers will be read every 37 minutes with our ad reads. If you need a skateboard, go to our location skate shop in West Bremerton. If you need a haircut, hit up Swell Blended. He's right here. We talk about him every 37 minutes. Our wives are also very impressive, as I said earlier. Carolina is at Lexi Kayo on Twitch, and my wife is at Leggings and Aprons on Instagram. So if you need cake, you're in the local area, deliver, pick up, all that stuff. So, that's it.
Divisiveness.
The ads go. Divisiveness, yes. So I have a list of things here that I feel have continued to take away from this legitimacy that the argument of, and this is not necessarily the argument of the vaccine, but the argument of authoritarian control,
okay,
right? Of mandates, of continued mandates further and further. So the first one that I wrote is the Met Gala, right?
Oh,
and
the Met Gala, baby.
And not even like the AOC thing, because that was its
just
own
in general,
deal,
yep.
But in all of the pictures, right, all of the celebrities are exempt because in California, anything like Hollywood, any production, movie production or anything like that is
entertainment
exempt.
type deals,
it's exempt, right? So all of these celebrities are there. They're doing whatever they want. They're drinking, doing all of the shit, right? And all of the help behind them is in a mask.
Yep. All
Anybody
the staff
working there, the people carrying the train of AOC's dress, wearing a mask, right? Everybody who's working there, all the staff wearing masks. It was the same thing at the Emmys, right? In enclosed building, indoors, everyone's sitting together at tables, right? They're all hanging out. None of the celebrities, none of the big stars are wearing masks.
Mm-hmm.
All of the staff are wearing masks. All the people who work there have to wear masks. I'm sure they also have to be vaccinated.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? I'm sure they also have to be vaccinated.
Yeah, I'm
vaccinated.
99% sure
Yeah.
that that's part of their guidelines. So everybody's vaccinated. Everybody that is a star of the show doesn't have to wear a mask, but all the plebs that are making all of it happen have to.
If you need money, if you have to work here, if you are unfortunate enough to have to need money and have to work here, you have to wear a mask. I'm not going to, though. I don't need that shit.
Nope.
I'm exempt. I'm a star, bitch.
Oh, my take is this is a crystal clear view of what movie series did I watch recently that I was super obsessed with for a while? The Hunger Games. This is the Capitol.
Yes.
And to take it away from fiction for a minute, right? What we're talking about is the elitist class divide here. We have, generally speaking,
animal farm,
politicians,
if you will, right?
Animal farm, yeah. Some pigs are more equal than others.
Yes.
Or some animals are more equal than others, or whatever the line is. But yeah, we have a group of elites now that have always been there, right? But it's never become more transparent now at who is an elite and who is not. AOC has been ushered into the elites, obviously, because now she's a powerful populist politician, which try not to let me forget about this. If we find a place where we can fit in, I want to talk about populism at some point.
Okay.
Mostly because I want to kind of ask you about like a theory-ish I have.
Deal.
But yeah, no, that one 100%. The Met Gala is just, and they do this every year. They wear ridiculous things that nobody would ever wear, that cost ridiculous amounts of money, and they make all of themselves feel very, very important, and it's very important to them to pontificate on high while they're up on stage accepting their awards and doing all these things to tell all the plebs how they should be living their lives. It's not different than what it used to be. It's just more in your face now. Yeah, it's a lot darker now because the consequences of not being an elite are that much more severe.
Yeah.
So what's the next one? I like this.
The next one was Don Lemon. Right?
Don
Lemon.
This mother.
In his transition to Chris Cuomo, and you could probably even find the clip that I didn't get it because I didn't think about it.
I think it's in my Twitter.
I'm sure that you can find it. Yeah, Don Lemon And so I'll just kind of lead us into it, and then we can play the clip. Don Lemon talking about how now is the time to start shaming the unvaccinated. That if they're stupid enough to continue to not be vaccinated, then it's their own fault, and we need to shame them, right? And it runs in similar vein of the woman from CNN talking about how, you don't have a
Christina
freedom
Wong?
to, you don't have freedom to travel. You need to get a vaccine so you can be allowed back into society to do the things that you want to do. This is it. Yeah. So this is the clip here. Yeah. Okay.
So let's blow this.
So this
up.
is Don Lemon, and this is, I believe, in the transition from Don Lemon's show into Chris Cuomo's show.
Yeah.
And this is CNN's thing.
It's their handoff.
Yeah, exactly. And I think all the networks do it, all the big news networks,
Yeah.
because they're live 24 hours.
Yep.
So so they do a handoff from one to the other. So this is the clip here.
Let's do it.
This stuff, nothing wrong with Botox.
People don't know what they eat,
Look,
what they drink,
I tried it
what they
once.
smoke.
My eyebrow went up. I don't have it now. As you can see, I got all these wrinkles. Everybody asks me when I'm going to get. You need Botox. But listen, nothing wrong with Botox.
Clearly.
But I'm saying, do people really know what's in stuff that they inject in their bodies all the time? And they're
What
like,
they eat, what they drink?
eat, what they drink. Stop it. Stop it with the ignorance. And we have to stop saying, oh, well, you have to listen to people. And no, you don't. These people are being harmful to the greater good. You don't have to listen to a minority of people who are being harmful to the greater good and who are not acting on logic, reason, and science. I had an issue, I told you, Chris, when my family was here, and they were saying, well, I don't know, I just don't know. I said, you know how you got here to visit me in New York? You took an airplane. What is that? Science. Right? You know why people live to be older than 40, 50, 60 years old these days? Science, medicine. No one questions that. You know why people, what is so contradictory about it? When people get sick, they go into the hospital and they say, throw it all, give it to me, inject it, put it in me. And you're going to pay a whole lot of money. And you're going to tax the medical system when you could have gotten it for free and you wouldn't be in that position in the first place.
You're going to question the vaccine, but you want to take a horse dewormer. But look, here's the thing. I accept everything you've just said. Most of all, the idea that the majority cannot be held by the tyranny of a minority.
Yeah.
Their stubbornness has to be their own consequence at some point, and the rest of us have to be able to live life.
Yeah.
Now.
All right. So
Go ahead.
that's one of my favorite first
that
clips.
last part about the tyranny of the minority.
Yeah.
That's funny.
It's like, wait, what? Did you
That's
just
funny.
hear yourself?
Yes.
What did you just say?
Yes. So I have something. You go ahead. You go first. Unless you don't have anything, because I have.
Like where would I even begin on that one? Again, elitist condescension towards anybody that doesn't agree with them. The amount of for the greater good speak. This dude has obviously never read any literature that came out of the Soviet Union, ever. He has no idea what he's talking about. When you start believing that it doesn't matter what an individual stance in, the only thing that matters is the greater good, that's how you get genocides. It has been proven time and time again throughout history. And yeah, he has no problem saying that because he's an ignorant fucking moron who has no idea of the consequences of his words. They're being spread around on there. CNN is where the garbage comes from that everybody has to deal with every day. CNN, MSNBC, same deal with Fox News. They're not immune to this bullshit either.
And all the bullshit.
He has no consequence. He has no idea the consequences that are coming out of his words by saying stupid shit like that. It really pisses me off.
Yeah.
It's condescending. It is super elitist. And all he's doing is telling you, you're not as good as me because you won't support the collective decision of the collective group. It's dangerous and it's ignorant, and it pisses me the fuck off because Don Lemon his net worth, I think we talked about this once before, it's like $20 million. He makes $4 million a year. And this dude is not you. He will never be you. You're probably never going to be, well, I mean, we will, of course. We'll be like him, but we'll be way better.
Yes.
So that's my instant take on that one. Division, distrust, that's why.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I was going to say, is that this is why people talk so much about breakthrough cases, is because that part of the demonization of you're the reason this is spreading, you're the reason this is happening.
Yep.
When the breakthrough cases matter, they're happening. We don't know what rate, right? Because if you could show people, it's another piece of data that would matter. If you could show people breakthrough cases are happening, but only at a rate of whatever. You know? If regular COVID, these are just numbers. I'm just making up numbers. If regular COVID spreads at I don't know. You have a 30% chance of getting COVID, or spreading COVID, but if you get the vaccine, then only like a 10% chance of spreading it. I don't know.
Still seems like a good deal.
You know what I'm saying? If you're able to, that's probably makes no sense. But if you're able to demonstrate somehow that the chance of spreading it is less, and people are saying that, right? That's a common talking point, but we don't know that. We don't actually know that because we don't know what the number of breakthrough cases are. So we don't know how many people have it, how many people are spreading it, and that very well may be the case. But we don't know that. No one knows that. No one can tell me that because no one has that information. And that's...
Yeah, Will wants to know if he
lot of
can
people
post a
hung up
music
on.
video about Russia in the chat. Yeah, I'd say go for it. Buddy.
Do it.
We're having some issues with the chat on the actual YouTube stream, so we won't be able to open it up and play it or anything like that. Plus, we'll probably get a YouTube strike for that for
Playing somebody
copyright.
else's
But
content,
yeah, throw it up in there, buddy. I don't.
Yeah,
go to
that's
town.
no problem. So the next thing that I have here is the San Francisco mayor, right? And this actually
the
it
one in
gave
the
me
bar. I think I have that clip
and
too.
it gave me a little bit of hope actually in the end, and I'll tell you why once we get there. But the San Francisco mayor, what did you say their name was?
Oh, I don't remember.
Oh.
I think I have the clip.
Doesn't matter. So I thought you said her name, but the mayor of San Francisco went to a concert for Tony.
Tony.
There was a video of her dancing and being up from her table and not wearing a mask. And so I was not irate about it. That's not what we're talking about this. But it, again, just like the Met Gala, just like the Emmys, highlights the separation of classes there. Because when she gets called on it, her excuse is like, well, I don't really see why this even matters because, Tony was playing and they haven't been together in 20 years. And I
was
think
feeling
that,
it.
I think that it's
London
sad
Breed is the
that...
name.
And I think that it's sad that that's not getting more coverage. And yeah, I was feeling it. And no, I'm vaccinated. So no, I'm not going to wear my mask the whole time. And I'm not going to take a sip and put my mask on and take a sip and put my mask on, right? So that's kind of the reason I got a little bit of hope because I'm like, they might be starting to understand why this is so fucking ridiculous, right? Why all of this has been so ridiculous that the extent that some of this has gone to is so fucking ridiculous. Because in California, in San Francisco, that's their own policy.
Yep.
Remember to put your mask on in between each sip and bite. That is in their public health documents in California. That is actively happening right now.
Yep.
So that's what you've been pushing. That's what people have to do when they're not you in California.
Yep.
Right? So I feel like, and maybe that's false hope. I don't know. But it gave me a little bit of hope that I'm like, they might be starting to see that it's overboard. It's too much. It's way too much.
Yeah.
And what do you think about that? Is it false hope? Am I too...
I'm black-pilled as fuck on this one. No. This is just...
It's too late.
This is just another...
She just got caught.
An elitist piece of shit who is holier than thou, who knows better than you do how you should be living your life, just like Gavin Newsom, who has no fear. They have no fear of the virus, but they insist that you should be fucking terrified, that you should close your doors, you should be rolling around in masks everywhere, you should probably be double masking. Double masking went away recently. I don't know if you've really noticed, it just kind of dipped out.
Yeah.
But no, this is hypocrisy. They're just trying to cover their ass and make an excuse, and they're going to get away with it because they are the elite. Nobody can tell them no. They can go out and do whatever they want, and people are going to be listening to them and be like, yeah. But then they're still going to have the mandates out there. They're still going to have the policies and I'm not going to call them laws. I need to quit calling them laws because they're not laws. They're regulations. They're imposed. They're like a law, but they're just imposed on you. There's no.
The executive orders.
Yeah, exactly. But no, I am super black-pilled on this. No way in hell this is going to start a trend. I would love it to, and if it actually happened, I will eat crow all day long for this thing. I will publicly post on Twitter, just like Bill Maher did, or no, Sam Harris did, and I would be super happy to be wrong about this. But I don't think I am. Yeah. I think this is just another elite move to it's an elite power move to say I can do whatever I want and there's nothing you can do about it because I get to tell you how to live your life. You don't get to tell me shit.
Yeah, you're probably
right. I'm sorry I'm bringing the room down.
No, you're probably right.
Crushing morosity achieved.
This last one is going to take us into our next topic unless you have anything else that you want to say about
Go
COVID
for it.
right now.
Nope.
So this next one is going to take us to our next topic, and it's going to be the border. Maxine Waters. Right?
Oh, yes.
The images.
It's worse than slavery, bro.
The images of the Border Patrol officers on horseback allegedly whipping Haitian migrants And it's good. You have a horse background, so this is going to be
I've
good
been
for
waiting
you.
for
So-
this. I have been waiting all fucking
and we're
week
not
for
gonna
this.
this is not the main point of this discussion. We
Yeah.
are going to talk about it because it's been such an enormous deal, but
It's a
that's
good,
not.
that's why it's a perfect segue. I
Yeah.
think.
So Maxine Waters, I'm sure everybody has seen these pictures, right?
Yes.
And so when Maxine Waters gets asked about these pictures, she says it's worse than what we saw during slavery.
Yeah.
So there are no actual pictures of CBP officers making contact with the reins with Haitian individuals,
Mm-hmm.
right? Just in pictures that look like they are whipping these individuals with split reins, right? I believe is what they're called, or
Yeah.
just at least long reins. They're
Yeah, just reins.
Yeah. So
All reins are long.
Well,
Most. Yeah.
yeah, so Maxine Waters says it's worse than what we saw in slavery. We've
Mm-hmm.
now seen that the photographer who took these pictures came out and said that is not at all what
Oh, yeah.
happened. I didn't see anybody get whipped by Border Patrol. That never happened. He said, I understand how you could see that or you could think that looking at the pictures, but that's not at all what happened. So I have a couple of different clips on this that we can play because, I mean, it made the rounds. It was, I mean...
Oh, all of last weekend, it ran.
Yes.
The storylines were Border Patrol whipping people on horseback.
Yeah.
Those were the headlines, and then they slowly started to change.
Yes. Joe Biden, said that people were going to pay for it. And so...
Yeah, they've already removed the horse-mounted Border Patrol. They suspended that.
They're
not allowed to use horses anymore.
Yeah, and those officers are on administrative duty, so
Yeah.
they're at desks now.
Yeah. And so just to add some actual context to this, because I re-listened to
Do you have
Shapiro's
our
episode
signal
on it.
conversation up on your?
I
I'm
have
sorry, I
it
didn't
ready
mean
to
to
go.
interrupt you. I just
Nope.
wanted to make sure.
I should get the notification when it arrives. But I re-listened to the Ben Shapiro show from Friday when he attempted to talk about it, and again had an ignorant take on it, talking about using the reins to whip the flank of a horse so that it can maneuver and stuff like that, which is patently absurd. It can work, yeah, but that's not how you navigate a horse. No, you use the reins, which are attached to a bit or attached to a bridle, which has a bit that runs through their
Right.
mouth, and you gently and ever so slightly use leg pressure and you move your hand with the reins in it to lead the horse's head one way or another to get it to move in
So you steer
different
the
directions,
horse.
right? Yeah, you're steering the horse, but it's kind of like it's a really rudimentary way to do it. It's kind of base level. At the end of the day, if you're a decent horseman and you have a good horse that you've trained with, and there's a bond thing that takes place. There's a trust thing with horses and stuff. You don't need to do that.
Horses are mad smart.
It's very strange. Yeah, technically, I think horses are dumbass animals, but
yeah, you know what I'm saying.
yeah. But as far as the greater grand scheme of things, they're pretty intelligent.
On a scale of animals.
Yes. Ain't no dolphin, but they're like a toddler.
Like a dog or
you
something,
You can train them very well to
Teach
do
a
different
dog to use
things.
buttons and
Yeah.
shit,
Yeah, but yeah, no. The whole reporting about all of this just drove me up a wall, because the elite divide here is again taking place because you have these established media institutions that push truth out there are getting it totally wrong because they have no idea what they're talking about. And they obviously didn't talk to anybody that knows anything about horses or riding horses. None of what was reported over the weekend seemed to be accurate in that aspect. It was full of bad takes. Everybody had a bad take. Maxine Waters out there doing what she does best, getting everybody riled up about some, would you call that misinformation or disinformation? It's just a bunch of lies and bullshit is what it was.
I feel
And
like
she's
it's-
really
it's
good at getting that out
It's
out there.
misinformation until you know for certain that they weren't being whipped. I mean, it's wrong. It's completely false, no matter what. So probably disinformation, because regardless, even if they were being whipped by the Border Patrol, it's still not worse than what we saw during slavery, because people in slavery were literally killed. They were literally actually murdered by individuals who had power over them.
Yeah.
They were whipped until they were unrecognizable from behind.
Yep.
There are pictures you can find on the internet of people whose backs are unrecognizable because they are so scarred from lashings.
Oh, yeah, it's
so
disgusting.
To in any way, and for a black person to in any way compare the images of slavery, even not even the true capacity and understanding of slavery, but the images from slavery to what we saw, the alleged actions of Border Patrol officers is a disgrace to her as a representative.
Yeah.
And removes all legitimacy from her at any point in time.
Oh, yeah.
The little that she had before, if any,
Yeah, if
it
any.
should be gone. I don't. There is no reason that she should even retain her office in the next cycle.
Hard no, but you will.
If I was a black person, I would be deeply. I am generally offended by it anyway because it's so counterfactual.
As an
somebody
American,
who appreciates history, that is counterfactual. You are belittling what happened during slavery.
Yeah.
Right. What I will wholly accept is a black mark on this country, potentially the black mark on this country. Right. You are diminishing that to an unrecognizable figure by comparing that to the alleged action of Border Patrol officers in 2021 at Del Rio. It's ludicrous.
And Will asks a question here real quick.
Will Wallace.
He says, okay, so if you are trying to control a horse in a confined space,
Yes.
and he does quotes for confined because you're talking about you see the
In
pictures,
between
tight
individuals, yeah,
spaces. You're trying to correct, make sure people don't cross and all this.
Outside, but
would you
individual.
not have to jerk the reins to quickly turn the horse?
Potentially.
Potentially, yeah. It really comes down to a case-to-case deal, and when you, depending on what bridle and stuff you're sporting like that, what your tack setup is, hopefully you guys can see my hands here. If this is like centered on a horse, right? Generally, while you're just cruising, you're holding your reins. They're coming up through like that. You keep them centered. You move about that much. Generally, how tight your reins are at that point, you move 6 inches one way, that horse is 90 degrees, And depending on how much training is behind it, you might have to give them a little tap, and they will know to do that because that's the training and that's the relationship you guys have.
Right.
It's all just very
depends.
situational.
Yeah, it
and
depends.
I could see tensions high. Yeah, you're out there like, whoo, whoo. But again, you're moving this much. You're moving this much. And that's enough to like throw you off the damn horse if it turns fast enough, man.
Yeah, and
it really
there are
is.
different reports of that there were migrants that were like that would try and run away, and so they would chase them on horseback to try and get them back. They would like herd them back into this group because I saw a video from Fox News. After the government tried to shut down the airspace, Fox News legitimately just a solid single file line across the Rio Grande, and then a hard right turn down that dirt road, and then just straight into the open air facility underneath.
Open air
overpass.
facility.
Yeah,
call that a facility. Yeah, we'll look
the
at the pictures.
fenced-in area. I mean, it's the same thing as the one that we saw.
It
with
looks like
with
the
migrants.
California homeless camps.
Yeah, well, and the same thing that we saw earlier this year with the South American migrants. Just a different part of the border. You know,
just a different area.
And I saw or heard from Alejandro Mayorkas they had 30,000 interactions over 10 days.
Oh,
and there
man.
was a maximum of 15,000 people in that one facility.
That is wild, man.
Yes, there is since no more people. I did send those 2 videos over, so they should be on signal there. There's 2 short clips that we can watch there, and this is Alejandro Mayorkas talking about his statements on the CBP and also Biden's statements on CBP.
Fantastic. And let's jump into it.
Of these mounted Border Patrol officers. You said on Saturday, or rather on the 20th, to ensure control of the horse, long reins are used. The person who took these photos of the Border Patrol agents says, I've never seen them whip anyone. So why is the president out there today talking about people being strapped?
So let me correct the statements in your question, if I may. It was on Friday. No, if I may. It was on Friday when I was, actually it was on Monday, I believe, when I was in Del Rio on the ground, and I made the statements without having seen the images. I saw the images on the flight back, and I made the statement that I did with respect to what those images suggested. The horses have long reins, and the image in the photograph that we all saw and that horrified the nation raised serious questions about about what occurred. And as I stated quite clearly, it conjured up images of what has occurred in the past. let me finish. There's also a question of how one uses the horse and how one interacts with individuals with the horse. And so I'm going to let the investigation run its course. I'm not going to interfere with that investigation. The facts will be determined by the investigators, and then the results will be driven by the facts that are determined.
And just to follow up, please, before the facts are in, is it helpful to your investigation for the President of the United States to use inflammatory language like people being strapped?
Let me just be very clear and repeat what I've said. I am not concerned with respect to the integrity of the investigation. We know how to conduct an investigation with integrity. I served as 12 years as a federal prosecutor. There were a great deal of comments in many of the cases that I handled in the public sphere, and I know how to maintain the integrity of an investigation, and this investigation will have integrity.
Secretary, I know you said you'd be looking into this, but the president was really clear today. He said those Border Patrol agents on horse vaccine and those images will pay. He said it's dangerous. He says it's wrong. And he said there will be consequences. So do you disagree with that?
Oh, no, I know the president was echoing the sentiments of the American public in response to the images and what those images suggest. But I want to speak to the fact that this investigation will be based on the facts that the investigators learn, and the results of the investigation will be driven by those facts and nothing less and nothing more.
The president said that they would pay, so you guys are not on the same page on that.
I think the president was speaking in terms of the horror that he observed from seeing the images and what they suggest. That investigation will have integrity, I can assure you of that.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary.
Hey, so that, again, from a guy that knows a lot about horses, grew up with horses. To this day, I'm as comfortable on the back of a horse as I've ever been. It's kind of like riding a bike, never really goes away. What we have here is a lot of people jumping to judgments and making assumptions about how this whole deal works and having actually no idea how this works at all. Let's see, William Wallace, once again in the chat. Growing up in Florida in the early 90s, being the only white kid on the football team, being one of the few white kids in my school, racism was prevalent down there then. Oh, well, yeah, I guess racism doesn't care what color you are.
No.
Racism just cares that you're not that color.
Yeah, and we have
That's
spoken
really what it is.
openly against the new definition of racism that calls into play the power structure and having power over another individual and classes, and we very much disagree with that. Racism
Terrible.
is prejudging somebody based solely off of their race, and this is obviously not a technical definition, but you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, we all know what it is.
Inferring that person is in some way inherently lesser because of their race,
Yeah.
Which is obviously immoral.
100%.
Something that we would not, the immorality of which we would defend to the end on this show.
Yes, and actively try to fight the left's active racism that is happening every day now.
So my biggest issue with these clips, right, and Joe Biden's statements is that he's 1,000 years old, but
This is true.
I expect from our president, the United States president, whoever it may be, especially as there is a active federal investigation going on into these events at the border, to withhold his statements of saying these people will pay. Right?
That's terrifying.
There is a federal investigation going on right now. How do you know that these people will pay? Especially now that we have a witness who took the very picture that has sparked this investigation, who said that never happened. So in what way will they pay? For what it seems like acting within the bounds of the guidelines of their job, right? Do we maybe need to take a look at the guidelines, adjust the way they're doing it? Maybe. That seems like it's probably legitimate conversation. If you're knocking people down, if you're getting too close to people, there's definitely a conversation to be had about intimidating people with a horse, right?
Oh,
it's a fucking horse.
It's giant and it weighs a lot.
It's a fucking horse.
It will
right?
walk right through you.
That has been, especially when horses were still actively used in battle, part of the whole jam. It makes you way bigger than everybody else.
Oh, yeah.
Right? That was an intimidation factor reading all this shit about the Revolutionary War, right? It was an intimidation factor by the British against American citizens, American individuals, right? If you run up on somebody with a horse and they're a lone individual, you can knock them down. You can just stand close to them so the horse's chest is at their face. In 1776, people were like 5 feet tall.
Yep.
So they're damn near underneath a horse, So there's definitely a conversation.
I wonder
to
if the
be had
horses
there.
were smaller back then too.
But I was literally thinking that as I was saying, and I
Like, I
wonder if
wonder.
the horses were also smaller. I don't
Everything
know.
was smaller.
But that's a very interesting conversation. But the fact that the president is prejudging this federal investigation into another executive branch, right, or an executive sector is extremely dangerous. Extremely dangerous.
Yeah.
And I don't see a way in which I struggle to see a way in which it doesn't any way interfere with the investigation, especially
It's a predetermined outcome now.
especially with the influence that we've seen Joe Biden have through this administration in the way, and I have another video later that will speak to that, of just the sweeping decision of conversations go on for long enough, and then Joe Biden says, all right, enough, this needs to be done, and they find a way to get it done, right? We just watched it happen with the eviction moratorium. It came down to the wire, to the day, I believe, that the eviction moratorium was going to expire, and they said, don't worry about it. We got it.
We got it. Don't worry about what the Supreme Court
I told you
said.
a month ago I couldn't do. I got it handled. Don't worry about it. Actually, it wasn't me. It was the CDC. So it's all good to go. Don't worry about it. Wow. It's
So I guess
that's important to remember. That influence is important to remember.
Yes.
When comments like this are made, and then you have Alejandro Mayorkas say, don't worry about it. I'll make sure that this investigation has integrity,
And it's strange because we are definitely in a new era of being able to prejudge situations out in the public from an official office, like the office of the presidency, or even maybe, if Mayorkas makes comments or something like that, when they don't have a full fact of what's going on. The fact that there was an active investigation going on, basically the minute these things came out, they're like, all right, investigate, go. And for the president of the United States to come out and make a statement like that in total ignorance of the actual situation, it speaks to me more of somebody who's trying to get ahead and past of a current narrative and just put it to bed. This is bad. Those people are going to be punished. Investigation is going. Don't talk to me about this anymore. We're handling this. We're going to come down iron fist, taking the side of the populist outrage and just running with it. It's no different in my mind than police or detectives coming out and talking about an ongoing investigation while it's happening, and assuming, putting narratives out there to the public that we don't have a full understanding of whether or not it's true or not. You can look at James fucking Comey during the 2016 election, right? In the October surprise, commenting on an active investigation. Right. While it's happening. I mean, this is something that people just in general should not be doing. They're predetermining an outcome and then deciding to make an opinion statement on that based off of absolutely nothing, out of total ignorance about the entire situation. Like, I want to be more offended that it took place, but like you've said, this has been going on now for so long. It's just more of the same garbage. There
are multiple administrations.
Yeah, which once again, sowing more fucking
division,
almost divisity. I was like,
when it just
what?
continues to speak to the idea of the executive branch having too much power, too much influence, too much power. Because this isn't even a matter of executive control. This is just influence. They're actively influencing the way people are going to feel about it. If you're one of the horseback border patrol agents, how do you feel like? How could you possibly feel like you're going to get a fair investigation when the president has just said they're going to pay?
Yeah.
Why in the fuck would I feel like I am going to get a fair investigation? My boss's boss's boss, just said that I'm going to pay for something that I didn't do. Why in the world would I feel like I'm getting a fair investigation? That's ridiculous,
Coming down with an iron fist. That's a people pleaser answer. Hard yes it is. Yep. Playing. You're sticking your finger out, seeing what the winds are going in the populace and the outrage, and like, all right, I'm going with the prevailing winds on this one. Here's something Boom. Here's something for you. Feed the masses. Go. So now
We're the full topic.
Let's
now.
kind of get
Yep,
full on
that's
in
what
here.
I was just gonna say. We're
I
the
want to
full
lead
topic.
off with this picture from an article from Politico that shows a picture of the camp. Why does it? I guess I didn't have mics on. So we're just going to do that exercise one more time. It keeps not sticking. Del Rio Bridge, right there. There's the city of Del Rio. This is right here. You can see from the picture the Rio Grande right there in the back. So everything's just stacked right up underneath that first little area right over the bridge. I don't like the fact that it keeps shutting the sound off when I switch over to it. Yeah.
Whew. So this was a result of a few different things, right? As you said, 15,000 largely Haitian immigrants underneath this overpass. As Alejandro Mayorkas said, 30,000 interactions over about 10 days, 2 weeks or so, and 15,000 people at the camp at the maximum because people were being shuffled in and out all the time. A few months ago, we don't think we covered it as a whole story, but we definitely mentioned it, that the president of Haiti was assassinated.
Yes.
Very sketchy situation in which
Yep.
nobody else was killed in the building except for the president of Haiti. None
Yeah.
of his guards.
And there was some
nobody else.
There was some weird stuff with what was it? What agency were they saying they were from? DEA.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yes.
might have been a DEA informant that had people had worked with before, blah blah blah, and they assassinated him, and we had the massive earthquake there.
Yeah,
When
just
was
like a month
that?
after that. So
Yeah.
there's been a power struggle there for who's going to be the leader of the country long term.
Yep.
There was another massive earthquake there that displaced a ton of people, apparently about 30,000 people. So that's not funny, but apparently about
lot.
30,000 people. There was also a bunch of people.
Yeah, 7.2 magnitude quake in August.
There was also a bunch of people, Haitian immigrants, that as these new Haitian immigrants were coming to America, there was a number of older Haitian immigrants that had attempted to come here around 2010 when there was the other earthquake, right? And that were living in South America. And so when this new push from Haiti came, they also decided to make their new movement there. There obviously was a massive influx that was too great for the infrastructure of the tiny town of Del Rio to deal with the facility there. And so there was also not infrastructure in place to mobilize 15,000 people or 30,000 people and distribute them amongst different facilities to process them and then try and expel them, right?
Yeah.
There has been a series of questions of what to do with these migrants. And before I want to get to that, I want to remind everybody that we talk about these things regularly on our social media. Always sharing articles, always things like that. I am at Salt of the Street on Twitter and at alpaca_Donovan on Instagram. Colin is at Big Bird Offie on both those things. We also have our Salt of the Streets Instagram at Salt of the Streets, our Facebook at Salt of the Streets, our YouTube. Thank you for joining us on Salt of the Streets. Patreon at Salt of the Streets. Go there if you want to subscribe to us and donate to us monthly. Thank you very much to everybody who's doing that. You can find all this information at saltofthestreets.com. Our Patreon will be on all the website posts from here going forward. If you need a skateboard, go down to Location Skate Shop in West Bremerton. If you need a haircut, go down to Swell Blended. Hit him up on Instagram, on his website, schedule an appointment there. Our wives are also very impressive. Lexi Kayo on Twitch, and go to Leggings and Aprons on Instagram if you need a cake in the local area.
You just oiled that up, fine-tuned machine, dude.
Got it nailed. So,
and I think I fixed the audio problem. There's a hotkey situation. I just got rid of that, so we should be able to keep that as we go forward.
So I definitely have some clips, right? Because there has been some message to migrants. I wonder what the fuck I meant with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's see.
Are they? What is the messaging? Maybe.
Maybe.
Maybe. Yeah. There's a lot of,
Yeah.
and it's the same. It's a weird deal, right? Because this massive influx, even as far as like the standard southern border migration issues that we've had, that we've talked about at great length for a long time, the sudden influx and the numbers that came in the short amount of time was rather severe.
Yes.
I mean, that was something nobody essentially was ready for.
30,000.
Yeah, that's a load of people, man. Yeah. And just to show up like that, man, I can't imagine what that must have been like for the Border Patrol people that were down there, that were like, oh my God, there is a sea of human beings flooding across this thing. How do we do this?
Right.
It's a tough situation.
So it was handled a few different ways, right? And it gets very complicated. I did not understand until the last maybe 48 hours exactly how this was being done, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a federal program called TPS, Temporary Protective Status, that was extended by the Biden administration until July 15th or something like that. And so any Haitian immigrants, migrants who were, what is the difference? Is an immigrant if you're going to live here and a migrant if you're just here right now? Is there a difference?
No, I think a migrant is just a different term of saying an immigrant. It's
just a different way of
migrants,
saying it.
yeah, versus refugees. I think that's the difference. You know, the different status. Are you seeking a new life, or are you fleeing persecution?
Right.
I think that's the major difference.
So Haiti in particular and other countries can be designated for temporary protective status.
Mm-hmm.
So anybody, because the country is so terrible that
Yeah.
if you live there, you can come here and you are covered, and we will, allow you, kind of get you a process to citizenship and get you everything going. So if you were in the country before, I believe it's July 15th, you can apply for temporary protective status. Obviously, if you came in this influx, that's not going to happen. So I've been very confused as to why they are telling people to apply for temporary protective status unless they intend on trying to extend it again, which they haven't done yet. But again, I don't know why you would be telling people to apply for something they're definitely going to get rejected for if it's too late. You know what I'm saying? If Haiti is no longer on the list of temporary protective status, I don't know why you would be telling migrants to apply for it when they're there.
That's probably the messaging comment you wrote down. Or is this?
Maybe. I don't know. I'll send it to you.
It all
and
seems
we'll
like
listen to that one anyway.
It seems like really terrible messaging. You're, and it's weird, right? Because the timing is interesting, because it kind of makes more sense when you think about like the standard stuff that we're dealing with on the southern border, as groups of people from the, what do they call that, the something triangle.
The Southern Triangle.
Yeah, the Southern Triangle and stuff like that, from those countries moving up.
It's like
It's
Honduras,
kind of
Ecuador.
It's Honduras, El Salvador, and what
Guatemala.
else? Guatemala.
Yes.
Yep, those right there.
So
But this is
as a
Haiti.
team.
This is Haiti,
This is
which
Haiti.
is a, no matter which way you slice it, is a sea journey.
Yes.
Right? And
Which is weird.
How did all those people get over there?
30,000 people. So
That's a shit ton of people.
I wrote something down. I was listening to NPR this week, and they said that. Oh, I have it written down, and I want to make sure that I get it right.
Oh, yeah.
Because they said a large group of Haitian immigrants were found underneath an overpass in Texas.
That's the way they phrased
That's
it?
what they said. They were found.
We found
underneath
them.
an overpass in Texas. So.
Maybe the
How
media
the fuck
found
do
them.
Yeah, how do you find them? Like, what do you mean you found them? They started to amass and you came up on a group of 1,000 people chilling under an overpass? I don't think that's how that happened. And if that is how it happened, we obviously, and I've never been a build the wall type of guy, obviously we need something there if there can be 1,000 people that can just gather in a group on this side of the border and no one fucking knows about it.
Yeah. That seems...
We've got a problem here.
I thought we had high-tech solutions for this.
What happened to this? Yeah. Oh, that's weird. Yeah. A large group of Haitian immigrants found underneath an overpass. What the fuck does that mean, right? So...
I've got a great little drone video from the AP. They flew it before they shut down all the airspace and stuff.
Yeah.
I mean...
Go ahead and play that, and
then we'll get into the other clips.
Yeah, and I'll talk over it,
Okay.
Unless there's audio. Is it?
No, I don't think there's audio.
Yeah.
The AP does. They just kind of show text and stuff.
Right. I'll just talk about another way. That.
And then again, forgive me. I'm just going to make sure this audio situation works when we shift over.
Yep.
So play that. Oh shit! You can't hit buttons because it means fast forward. Okay, mics are going. Good.
So
bueno.
The other way that it's being handled, the third prong about how it's being handled, and I actually have a couple clips that are going to go over this a little bit more, right? That people can apply for asylum, but asylum is an individual, based on your individual status, right? And so if your individual circumstances are not generally worse than the people around you, then you can't apply for asylum, right?
Yeah.
And because Haiti is so horrible as it is, as just a general status to live in, your life, it's difficult for your life to be so terrible when you're from Haiti that you can apply for asylum, because everybody's life is so terrible.
Yeah, that it's
So-
because everything's kind of on a scale,
Yes.
and that's
But
messed up.
But
Kind of.
you're entitled to this review process, right? If you're able to make a legitimate claim for asylum, then you are entitled to a review process in which they take a lot of information from you. Biometric data is what they're talking about, and they give you a day to come back, and they say, "We'll see you then." Which is something we've been talking about for a long time. Donald Trump called it catch and release, right? That's the same thing. But there's been this undertone of Title 42 this entire time. Title 42 is a health initiative, which Jen Psaki will be very specific to tell you. It's a health initiative, right? That allows the United States to expel essentially everybody who doesn't get asylum back to their home country because COVID, and we can't have people massing here because it's dangerous, even though we just had 30,000 people get processed through Del Rio and literally didn't test a single one. Alejandro Mayorkas said it.
How does that work?
One person was tested. He doesn't even know of anybody if they even had symptoms of COVID-19. We don't know.
Yep.
You know, we know they're not testing everybody who's coming through the border processing facilities because they don't have enough tests to test everybody.
Yep.
When they have the test, they are testing everybody, but they don't always have the test. If you can't buy one at the store, they definitely don't have it at the border.
That would make sense. I don't know. It doesn't.
It doesn't make any sense.
No, it's
I sent you a couple of
mind-boggling.
clips, that we can play. That
Fantastic.
has to do. So one of the
Oh,
concerns,
Psaki clips are the best.
and one of this has to do with equity at the border, right? And this
Equity!
became a big point of contention between all of many reporters. That was a close one. Many reporters and the Biden administration, because of the concern of the people being expelled immediately from Haiti. Anybody, pretty much single males or single individuals, they can easily send back to Haiti through Title 42, say, we're not dealing with this, right?
Yep.
It's also become a huge point of contention of how fucking terrible Haiti is, whether or not it even makes sense to send people back to Haiti. And I have a clip about the morality of sending people back under Title 42 that's very interesting to hear Alejandro Mayorkas defend. But so this is a clip about the equity of
Equity at the border.
equity at the border, and there's a little bit extra in there that I don't remember what it was, and then also the messaging to migrants that I don't remember what that clip is, so we're going to
I'm
play
excited.
it. This
I'm
show's
going in
really
blind.
professional, yeah.
All right, we're going to play these two back to back, and then we'll jump on them.
Go ahead, April.
Jen, back on Haiti. I hear that, but digging in the weeds a little bit more, the process for Haitian migrants has always in this nation been different than other nations. You have people like Congresswoman Sheila Jackson-Lee, who's calling for equal treatment and fairness when it comes to the Haitians at the border. And overall, you're allowing Afghans to come in, Afghan supporters to come in, as well as Mexicans, and then Haitians are not allowed. Can you speak to that, the issue of equity and fairness?
Absolutely, April, and I appreciate your question. Let me just take these different pieces side by side, right? One, our immigration policy is not about one country or discriminating against one country over another. We want to end that and hopefully put an end to what we saw over the last 4 years. Let me start with Afghan allies. Afghans who are arriving in our country are entering in a sanctioned and orderly process that includes vetting and security screenings led by the Departments of State, Defense, and Homeland Security. It's not about one particular country of origin, but we've outlined very specifically in here what those processes look like as individuals who are evacuated go to lily pad countries, go through security vetting before they come to the United States on a range of programs. As it relates to individuals who are coming across the border, wherever they're coming from, whatever country they're coming from, Title 42 remains in place. There are a range of programs that people who are in the country can apply for or may be eligible for, including TPS for Haiti, which is something that we still are continuing to look at and review. The Secretary of State, the Secretary of Homeland Security are constantly assessing circumstances on the ground that would necessitate a TPS designation for any country. And they've obviously made a couple of designations over the course of the last couple of months as it relates to Haiti.
And no matter whether it's the people who left, the Haitians that left in 2010 and traveled to South America and now trying to travel here, or the ones who left after this earthquake, either way, what is there for them to go back to when these planes are taking them back? The nation is in unrest. The president was assassinated. There are gangs that people are they're scared of. Democratic rule is not necessarily in place. The people are calling, particularly those here.
Let's roll right into the next one.
Well, I'll start there.
Okay.
So the crisis of the border in Del Rio, we heard DHS say they're going to continue expulsions under Title 42. So what is the White House's message to Haitian immigrants seeking asylum? Is there a place for them?
Well, I think it's important for people to understand a couple of the components of what's happening right now on the ground. One, we extended TPS several months ago and again reevaluated to ensure that we were taking into account what was happening on the ground in Haiti. So that I understand, but that does apply to people who are here who arrived before a certain date, and I think that's an important component of what's happening. If you're talking about the situation on the ground in Del Rio, one, it's a challenging situation. It's devastating to watch this footage. I think it's important, though, for people to also know that what we're trying to do is also protect people. One, we've been conveying that this is not the time to come. We have been implementing Title 42. That's not just about people in the United States. That's also about protecting migrants who would come in mass groups and be in mass groups. We are also surging resources and taking a multi-pronged approach. We've been working with the American Red Cross to bring in much needed resources. We've worked with World Central Kitchen to bring in meals, and we have been expediting repatriation flights, both to a range of countries in South and Central America, where people may have come from if they can be accepted back, and some back to Haiti. That is what our focus is on at this point in time. And our message continues to be, as you've heard Secretary Mayorkas convey, now is not the time to come. For a range of reasons, including we don't have the immigration system up and running in the way we want, including there is still a pandemic and Title 42 remains in place. And these are the steps that we're taking in part to protect the border communities as well as the migrants themselves.
Okay.
So I actually want to give Jen Psaki a little bit of credit, right, for the way that she defended the attacks on equity, right? It's, again, it's a sticky situation because the countries are so different. And in regards to immigration, you have to look at the particular circumstances in each individual country. And I don't necessarily agree that this is the correct way to be looking at it, right? Mm-hmm. Because, like I said, the way they're viewing it is that Haiti is such a shithole, and I'm not like Haiti's a shithole country, but Haiti is it's so terrible right now that it's difficult. It's difficult to prove you are under specific persecution when people coming from Mexico and South America have a much easier time proving my husband was killed and now my children are going to be taken from me if we don't come to America right now. Yeah. It's a much easier thing for them to prove there. So I have to give Jen Psaki some credit because this is not an issue of racism. It's not because we don't want to fuck with Haiti and so they have to go back, but we love Mexicans and we love all the Iraqis or the Afghanistanis, right? The Afghanistanis, Afghanistanis with AIDS. You know what I'm saying? That's an office reference. I'm not saying all Afghanis have AIDS. No, but a lot of the Afghans are SIVs. They're people whose homes have been destroyed. We just spent the last 20 years destroying Afghanistan. If there are some people who have a legitimate case to make that we owe them something, it's people whose home we bombed and destroyed and battled with people in the streets or were the cause of somebody helping bomb it. Like, you can go back and forth on this all day. We just, you know what I'm saying? We just spent 20 years in Afghanistan literally fucking that country. I'm not going to compare Mexicans and Haitians and Afghans and who deserves it more. I'm not going to do that, right?
Seems like a fucked up
There are completely different circumstances. Afghans are coming here under SIV visas, special immigrant visas, because we destroyed their fucking home. They helped us, and now they're like, we made a deal with them for them to come here. Yep. Haiti is a different circumstance, which we have TPS that Jen Psaki just said we're obviously looking at extending, right? Mm-hmm. I didn't even hear that the first time. They're obviously looking at extending it. She just said that. That's why they're telling people to continue to apply for it, because just apply before we're done even processing your application. They're going to extend it anyway, and you're going to get approved. So just go for it. The bureaucracy moves so slow. Just go for it. We're going to take your data. You can just be released into the country, even though we didn't COVID test you, and everything is going to be fine. But also restrictions because COVID. So she just talked about this. The people coming from South America, like we just talked about, have a much easier time proving asylum than people from Haiti do.
Yep.
Much easier time, right? There's also a bunch of people coming here from Afghanistan with asylum cases because if they helped the Taliban and were not eligible for an SIV visa, they are very potentially in danger of being murdered by the Taliban.
Yep.
They've got a pretty legitimate case for I need help and I need to come here.
Yeah, a very specific threat.
Because of you guys. Because I helped you. So, but not enough to get an SIV. So, or maybe I could, but not my whole family, or whatever. You know what I'm saying? So, this is an instance of not even the Biden administration fighting into divisiveness, but these reporters who are insisting because the Biden administration murmured the word equity, they are now going to be slaves to it forever.
Oh yeah.
You cannot. You have said
You
1,000 times equity is going to be in the forefront of everything that we do. Okay, make the border equitable. Have fun.
Have fun.
Have fun. Have fun deciding who deserves it and who doesn't. You know, all these. Nope, they're all the same amount of fucked up now. You know, or it's Afghanistan is only 33% fucked up, and Haiti is 23% fucked up. That have fun.
That's a rough road, man.
Have fucking fun. So it's ridiculous.
Who gives you the moral superiority to tell people who are worse off than others?
It's bad enough the way we're doing
why?
it now. You know,
it's so terrible that I mean, but that's what equity is all about.
Yep.
It's all about who's higher on the scale than the others. It's all about who is more superior. It's disgusting, and when you have to apply equity to the southern border, I love the way you put that. Have fun.
Have fun.
You wanted it. You got it. Fix it.
Yeah,
and
no,
the
I'm
really
definitely not
sad
doing
thing
that.
is too. I mean, there's a large group of people that live in like American citizens that live right there, that are now going to be dealing with this. I mean, it's very. I don't know how many of the. I have a hard time not calling them refugees, right? But we're getting into weird definitional games, semantic arguments and whatnot about what it really means. But I mean, these people, like Haiti's been a rough spot, man, for a long time. There was that originally years back, there was an earthquake and then tsunami type deal, right? Is that what the original kind of big one was?
2010.
And then another massive earthquake and stuff like this. It's like they can't catch a break in Haiti, man, and they have massive government problems and corruption problems and gang problems and all this stuff. Tough spot on the globe, right? That's a really shitty deal of the fucking what do you call that when you the birthing lottery or whatever it is. Like when you are born into a rough place like Haiti, you got no control over that, man, and now you're just stuck there. I don't know how to do that, man, because the morality says you should probably figure out a way to get these people, to allow these people in here. Or I didn't know lily pad countries was a term. But when you think about, so like we're not going to let you in right now. We're going to fly you back down to, South America,
Yep.
and you're going to wait there while they do the background check. They all do this stuff, and then once they've cleared you and we've cleared it with them, then we'll allow you in under whatever status it is that you're applying for or whatever it is.
Which is interesting because it's eerily similar to the Wait in Mexico policy from Donald Trump.
It's the same deal.
Yeah,
it's the same deal.
And I have another clip on this because the Biden administration is very intent on drawing a distinction between their policy and the Trump administration policy, even though no substantial immigration policy has changed since Joe Biden came into office. Other than what they retracted they called the Muslim ban is what they called it. So like that was retracted, right? But I mean. There are very, very few substantial things. Probably no legitimately substantial things have changed through the immigration system because they have come to the realization finally after sitting on their soapbox for the last 9 months that they actually can't change anything in the immigration system and that legislation needs to be passed.
Yep. And there is no way in hell Congress is ever going to write any kind of substantial immigration legislation on its own.
Right, because
there was some thrown in there in the latest thing.
Now, right, where they tried to the Democrats tried to take immigration reform and put it into the budget.
Yep.
And try and
The
make it a
reconciliation
budget
bill.
reconciliation thing. And the
Senate parliamentarian was like,
absolutely not.
hard no.
Not only is this not part of the budget, there's no way it's going to be budget neutral for you to change all of these things and add all of these.
Yep.
Because you're definitely talking about border security if you're going to add these things to the border, right? And now you have people like Crystal Ball who are saying, oh, you're allowing an unelected official to get in the way of immigration reform, when in reality, this is an opportunity. Opportunity is a horrible word because the Democrats will never take it, right?
Yeah.
But this is a circumstance. Nope, it's an opportunity. It's a blown opportunity by the Democrats. That's exactly what it is. I'm calling it right now. To craft a piece of bipartisan legislation with the Republican Party that has already actively said that it is willing. Immigration reform is on the table. The last government shutdown was over immigration reform.
Yep.
They had agreements and everything until Nancy Pelosi said, no, fuck that. We're not doing it.
Yep.
Right? That just happened 2 years ago.
Yeah.
They had this fight and agreements on the table for Republicans and Democrats. Money for the border, immigration reform, pathway to citizenship for DACA. What are we doing? What are we talking about here? This is the only way that we could get it done. Joe Manchin was in the way, and so was Kirsten Sinema, and now we're fucked, and we can't get it done. That is absolute bullshit.
Yep.
2 years ago, there was a full agreement on it. What are we talking about right now?
Yeah.
What are we talking about here? It's ridiculous.
Yep. Because it's not about immigration reform. It's
Oh,
really
no.
not.
No.
And that's the sad thing, because we've been talking about the problems on the southern border now for years. I think it's probably one of the original topics we started talking about once we started doing the podcast. I mean, it's been here since we've been doing this thing. Nothing has fundamentally changed. Nothing has fundamentally changed about it. There was some wall stuff that was built up, and then, there was some talk about the Flores agreement, and, there was that piece of legislation that got drafted and ultimately got pulled, but nothing substantial has changed as far as legislation and, substantial immigration reform. There isn't. And yeah, Crystal Ball on Breaking Points, almost said Rising again, but she has become a full-blown authoritarian, a full-blown big government, authoritarian who believes that republicanism is a disease and popular democracy should be the way to go, and it doesn't matter what everybody else says. We shouldn't have some unelected bureaucrat tell you that you can't have this immigration reform in there, because she wants it so desperately. She's willing to just say, screw federalism, screw the republic. This is not how this should work. It's over. And the ignorance behind that, bro. I cannot stand what that show has become anymore. It's so
really
disappointing. It's become so bad. I can't even. And I think it's because she's been hanging out with Kyle Kalinske too long, filling her head with all this socialist nonsense and authoritarianism. But no, I don't know. It's a massive problem. It's still a massive problem. These problems are not going to go away anytime soon until something is done.
Right.
And there doesn't seem to be any appetite for it whatsoever. I guarantee you that right now, if you pulled the same exact legislation that they were all about 2 years ago, you wouldn't have the same voting alignment on it as you did 2 years ago. Mind
Right.
you, there was an election in between now, and there's different people in the chairs, but the entire congressional landscape has totally changed. And I would say you probably would not be able to pass that now, given the makeup of Congress and the Senate. I don't see it. And we're just going to continue to do this, and now we have a more ineffective portion of the border because you're removing their ability to move around that landscape. A horse-mounted Border Patrol agent in that area is going to be 100 times more effective on the back of a horse than he would be in a four-wheeler or on foot or in a Jeep or whatever.
New York has even said people's lives had already been saved by these agents before.
Oh, yeah.
By these very horses, lives had already been saved.
Guarantee it.
Yeah.
Guarantee it. But, what did Biden say? They're going to be punished.
Yep. They will pay.
They will pay. They will pay. But they will pay. Yeah, I do not know how you don't have, how there's been a hemorrhage of people leaving the police force and various other institutions and things like that as the mandates come along, as all this insane authoritarianism has taken hold. I don't know why there's not people in the Border Patrol that have been being bastardized now for years and years and years. I don't know why they're not just picking up stakes saying, screw this, you guys have at it. I literally can't do anything right.
Yeah.
I'm out. I don't know why that's not happening, but I don't know, bro. It's tough not to be black-pilled left and right today. There's too much bad shit going on.
Yeah.
And no willingness to try to solve anything. You're just trying to get ahead of the news cycle so you can move on to the next, tragedy that's going to befall us somewhere. The next, what's the right word I'm looking for? The next problem that pops up.
Yeah.
It's all terrible. I don't know what we do about this at this point. But yeah, now we have a bunch of people that have been released into the interior on the catch and release program, for lack of a better term.
And we don't even have the full numbers. Alejandro Mayorkas had some numbers of people who had left the country. About 2,000 people have been expelled from the country. Haitians been expelled from here. There's about 12,000 people look like they're going to be processed through what they're now calling removal proceedings, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is when you're being looked at for these different statuses, Title 42, or not Title 42, TPS, asylum, because there's also these exemptions from Title 42 that Alejandro Mayorkas laid out. That's like, I have them here, just 1 second. See, immediate medical need, capacity issues, which is exactly what they're dealing with, right? Which is one reason you wouldn't be expelled under Title 42. Or torture, if you are subject to torture, if you're going to go back, that apparently has its own special category. But those are the three reasons that you wouldn't be immediately expelled from the country, and then you would also have the opportunity at that point to, when you're being processed, to apply for asylum, TPS, things like that. So I just sent you 2 clips there. The mass expulsion of people at the border. And this has to do with, the comparison, like I was talking about, between the Biden administration policy and the Trump administration policy.
Mm-hmm.
They're trying to draw a distinction there that doesn't really exist. And then there's one that's about to come through that has to do with them deciding who gets to stay and who has to go, and then also who actually has the migrant numbers, because there was this back and forth for a long time between Alejandro Mayorkas and Jen Psaki of who had the numbers of exactly what was happening with everybody at the border. And it wasn't until Alejandro Mayorkas came on this briefing yesterday that he was actually able to lay out figures for everybody of what had happened.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
All right, so before we jump into that,
Yes.
This is a really nice little tidbit here from Will. I will say, having been at the same training center that the CBP is trained at, they have the most number of training facilities. The general attitude of CBP is train them up, chum them out. So there's just get them in, get them back, get them on the border, get them in, get them on the border, get them in, get them on the border. Bro, if I could roll around in a CBP uniform riding a horse all day, I would seriously consider that.
Yeah.
That would be legit. That'd be one area of law enforcement I wouldn't have a problem with, I don't think. But anyways, let's get into these clips here.
Yes.
Exciting times. And especially now that when I hit show desktop, we have nice audio.
We've heard from Democrats on Capitol Hill, too, who say they're really against these mass deportations. The White House still stands behind the mass deportations. You still view them as humane?
First of all, they're not deportations. People are not coming into the country through legal methods. And again, our policy process has continued to be the same with Haiti as it is for anybody coming through for irregular migration across our border. I'd note, as I did yesterday, that as we've applied our border restrictions, as we've applied our immigration policies, there were more than 90,000 people who departed the country, who attempted to cross our border in the month of August. That was even before we saw the horrible photos that we saw of people gathering under the bridge. There is a process that is in place as people, whether they're coming from Haiti or any part of the world, goes through. Go ahead.
But Jen, we haven't yet heard recently from President Biden specifically about these images on the border. You have described him as saying that they're horrible, but what does he believe of the comparisons being made between his administration and the Trump administration? We saw Congresswoman Maxine Waters just today saying this is Trump's policy. Several other Democrats are saying this looks like the previous administration. What does he think of those comments?
Well, what our role is, and what the president has asked his outreach team, members of his national security team, Homeland Security team to do, is to explain clearly what our policy is and what our policy is not. We could not see it as any more different from the policy of the prior administration, which the president feels, we all feel, was inhumane, immoral, ineffective, wasn't operationally working, and because of the dysfunction of it, we have led to a very broken system that we're dealing with today. So what he has asked all of us to convey clearly to people who are understandably have questions, are passionate, are concerned, as we are about the images that we have seen, is one, we feel those images are horrible and horrific. There is an investigation the president certainly supports, overseen by the Department of Homeland Security, which he has conveyed will happen quickly. I can also convey to you that the secretary also conveyed to civil rights leaders earlier this morning that we would no longer be using horses in Del Rio. So that is something, a policy change that has been made in response. But separately, all related, it's also important for people to understand what our process and our immigration process is and what the steps are that are taken. We are still under Title 42 because we are in a global pandemic. So we are still operationalizing that. If people are not expelled under that, then there are a range of options. Either they are put into an alternative to detention, where biometric data is required. They are required to. They are given a notice to appear, or they are given, or they are put in an ICE facility. This is the process that is ongoing and has happened for every other migrant who has attempted to come irregularly across the border.
Roll on to the next one.
Yep.
Thank you, Jen. Just following up on this very basic but very important question. You're telling us that the DHS chief has the most recent numbers about how many of these Haitians under the bridge have been sent back and how many have been released into the U.S. The DHS chief is telling us that he doesn't know. So who else can we ask?
You can certainly ask the Department of Homeland Security. I am confident, Peter. I am confident he wanted to have the most up-to-date numbers, and we will venture to get you those, I promise you, this afternoon.
Is this an issue of not knowing, or is this an issue of a lot more people are being released into the U.S. than are being sent out?
That is certainly not the issue. First, I think it's important to reiterate what I conveyed earlier about what the actual process is. Individuals are expelled under Title 42. If they can't be expelled under Title 42, they are put into a removal process. If they are put into a removal process, they're either transported to an ICE facility or released with a legal document. That legal document includes fingerprints, photos, phone numbers, an address in the United States, and a background check. That's the process that transpires. That's a part of our immigration process, regardless of where you're coming from.
And just because you keep using Title 42 to defend this administration's immigration policies, that is a Trump-era regulation. You guys came in saying that the Trump-era immigration policy was very inhumane.
Title 42 is not an immigration policy. It is a health authority because we're in the middle of a pandemic. The Trump administration approach to immigration was inhumane and was immoral. That's why we need to put a new policy in place, and we need Congress to pass that policy.
Unified control, democratic control of Congress. Many months in office, you have not even tried.
That's not actually true. There's been a, Peter, just factual here. There's been a bill proposed, first day in office. Currently, it was proposed as a part of, steps were proposed as part of the reconciliation process. Right, the parliamentarian rejected that proposal. They're going back and proposing new options. President supports that. He would like to see immigration reform pass into law, more humane processes.
Okay. I don't. So there's a lot of talk about this biometric data, real quick. So I just wanted to Google what biometric data is.
Yes.
What do you think? What do you think of when you hear biometric data?
Maybe your fingerprints?
So just according to good old-fashioned Wikipedia here, biometrics are body measurements and calculations related to human characteristics, body metric
your height and weight?
authentication. It certainly could be, I think. I think also fingerprints would
Eye
definitely
color,
go with that.
hair color,
Yep.
things like that.
Retinal
Okay.
scans. I mean, that could be, biometric data.
But no COVID test, you know.
And yeah, biometric authentication is used in computer science as a form of identification and access control. It is also used to identify individuals in groups that are under surveillance. So, wow. I've always had this kind of weird feeling about, Will says going CBP is a terrible idea. Okay, good, because I'm not really going to do that. But yeah, ever since it feels real Minority Report-y, this biometric data. We had issues with the Taliban getting a hold of biometric data of soldiers and SIVs and our allies and stuff over in Afghanistan during that time. And it was like, well, what really does that constitute? Seems pretty legit.
Yeah.
It's like a data-driven form of identification, which I could see if you're going to be operating off of colloquially a catch and release immigration thing. If you're getting biometric data, that means in the surveillance state that is to come, it's easy to find people that way. You can confirm their identity much easier. But
on our social media, we have pictures there that you could confirm some of our biometric data. You could find that. I am at Salt of the Street on Twitter and at alpaca_Donovan on Instagram. Colin's at Big Bird Offie on both of those things.
Love the way you put that.
You can find all this on our website, saltofthestreets.com, where we also have our Instagram at Salt of the Streets, our YouTube. Thank you for joining us at YouTube, Salt of the Streets. We have our Facebook, fuck Facebook, Salt of the Streets, and also our Patreon, patreon.com/Salt of the Streets. You can find all that information right there. If you need a haircut, go down to Swell Blended. He's out there, and sign up at swellblended.com, an appointment there, or his Instagram. You can see some of his work. There's also a picture of me on there, so that's nice. If you need a skateboard, go down to Location Skate Shop in West Bremerton. Our wives are also very talented, so if you want to watch some Twitch, go to Lexi Kayo on Twitter. If you need a cake or a baked good, leggings and aprons on Twitter.
Boom. Fantastic. So we have two more clips. One of my AUKUS. And it looks like some more questions. I can't tell if that's my AUKUS or not.
So this has to do with the morality of expelling Haitians, like I was talking about. You got asked about the morality. And this other one is
policy contradictions.
Policy contradictions, yeah, with Title 42. So you can even play that one first, because that has to do kind of with the Biden administration, things that they said, some more heat that they're taking over equity and things like that. So
love it.
Bear with me, because this is moving pieces. But with asylum, there are people, advocates, immigration advocates, especially for the, advocating for the Haitian migrants right now. They're saying that this administration is breaking UN policies and its own policies by moving people out before allowing them to ask for asylum. Is that the case?
First of all, April, what we are doing, one, Haiti has temporary protected status for people who arrived here before July 29th. That is not a status that most other people who are irregularly migrating from other countries have. As individuals, as we go through this process, as I outlined just a few minutes ago, individuals who cannot be expelled under Title 42, a range of reasons why they may not be able to be. Those individuals are placed into removal proceedings. That is where the process would take place, where they would apply for a variety of programs. While they're in that process, they are required to also provide biometric and biographic information and data. So that's how the process works. What is important for people to know and understand is that this is how our immigration and border requirements apply to everyone, whether they're coming from Haiti or any country in South or Central America.
You have Africans as well, that you said there are people from other places, but you have Africans, Cameroonians, Ugandans, and Senegalese who are coming to that border as well. What happens with them as they are looking for asylum? Do you lump them into the same category with the Haitians that are at the border, be it Del Rio or wherever along the border?
I think the point I'm making, April, and then we just have to move on to get to more people, is that anyone who's coming from anywhere, if there's temporary protected status for their country, as there are for Haitians who arrived before July, that they can apply through that program. If they're coming from other countries where we don't have that status, then they are expelled according to Title 42. If they are not, if they can't be expelled according to Title 42, they're placed in expedited removal or in alternatives to detention, no matter what country they're coming from. Go ahead, Jeff.
Wow. My AUKUS.
Secretary, thank you. Our Title 42 expulsion, sending Haitians back to danger in Haiti, immoral? Yes or no?
No, they are not. They are driven by a public health imperative.
I understand the public health imperative, but are they immoral?
But let me explain, because let me be quite clear. We do not conduct ourselves in an immoral way. We do not conduct ourselves in an unethical way. In fact, we are restoring people by reason of the immorality of the past administration. We are reuniting families that were separated. Let me explain something, the reality of the situation, because we're dealing with a great number of individuals who are encountered at the border in a congregate setting and placed in customs and border protection, border patrol stations. And that can cause the significant spread of a pandemic. And it is in light of the operational realities that the Centers for Disease Control made a determination in its public health expertise that Title 42 authority must be exercised. It is a statutory authority. And they made the determination that the public health of the migrants themselves, our personnel, local communities, and the American public require it. And that is why we are exercising that authority to serve the public health. Over 600,000 Americans have died. More than 40 U.S. Customs and Border Protection personnel have died. Many migrants have gotten sick. We are doing this out of a public health need. It is not an immigration policy. It is not an immigration policy that we would embrace.
Okay, so what I am getting from these clips right off the bat, right? Wait in Mexico policy, colloquially called that, right, was not really wait in Mexico. It was wait in a number of different countries that have signed on to this thing. They temporarily removed it. Mexico got out the deal when they could, and other countries didn't. Our other lily pad countries, right?
Right.
So we can do that. That's in place. That is a Trump-era policy that is still in place. It's just worse off now because Mexico, the nearest neighbor, ain't participating anymore.
Because now we have to process people and fly them there more often, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And Title 42 is, if you take his logic, because Title 42 is a public health authority, right? Which means that it is, according to his argument, inherently moral because it is for the greater good of public health. So he's not going to say moral because they're saying that this whole system of shipping people out is bad and all this stuff, but he can't say that. But realistically, he's making a cop-out to say any public health measures is by de facto, because it is for public health, moral. Take that logic and run with it. With anything that relates to public health is now a moral decision because the CDC says it is.
Right.
Jen Psaki continuing to bring up the temporary protective status, TPS, keep saying, well, any Haitians that showed up
before July 29,
yeah, the 29th, 2 months ago, if they're fine, they could totally go to protective status. We're not offering that now. But if they showed up before they actually all showed up, it has nothing to do with the current situation, they would have been able to apply for TPS.
Yeah.
Cool. Now they're just letting people in on the assumption that they would qualify for TPS because they're looking at possibly reinstating Haiti.
Sorry, go ahead.
I don't know what that, so nothing here makes sense. They're totally contradicting everything that they're trying to say. They say one thing about trying to do things humanely. This is Trump policy. It's bad, but it's not really a migration process. It's a public health process under Title 42, and that's just the way things go right now. And then temporary protective status, it doesn't apply right now, but I'm not going to say that. So it's only that, but you should apply for it because you might you might get it in the future.
Do you know what the TPS thing reminds me of? This is our South Park reference for the day.
Yes.
Is when they're having all
Gotta
those
get at least one.
When they're having all those issues with the cable company and they're there trying to return shit, and the cable company are like, "Oh, that's such a problem.
Oh, yeah.
It's so inconvenient." That's what it reminds me of. I was like, "Oh no. Oh, you're not covered under TPS anymore? I'm so sorry." That's what it reminds me of. It's horrible. And when Alejandro Mayorkas was talking, what that reminded me of, when Richard Nixon was being investigated for Watergate and all of the bullshit, right? His justification through his own secret tapes, or, well, if the president does it, it's not illegal.
Yeah.
Right? Well, if the president does it, it's not immoral. We don't do immoral things, is what he said. We don't do that. We don't do immoral things. You might think this is immoral, but we don't do immoral things.
Yep.
So if we're doing it, it's not immoral. Just like you said, if the CDC is doing it, it's not immoral. If we're doing it,
It's for public health.
it's not immoral. This is for the greater good. This is the right thing to do. It's not
yeah.
immoral.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
definitely not immoral to send people back to a country that you can't even prove your life is worse than anybody else because your life is so fucking terrible on the whole.
Yeah.
Definitely not immoral at all. And I'm not arguing either way because I don't know what the right answer is. But
Yeah.
this isn't it. You know, it's far be it from me to, I know that it's like the worst thing you can do to criticize somebody's plan and not offer a plan of your own. But I don't know what the solution is to this problem. But telling people to apply for a program they could get denied for is not the way to go. Because who knows how long it's going to take for TPS to be extended somewhere else. And if you can't, I don't know, it's going to be difficult for them to prove, I think. Not that it's not terrible, but to continue to extend it further and further and further. I'm sure there's some type of oversight or review that they're subject to, whether it's through the Inspector General or the Supreme Court, of whether or not they can extend TPS further out. I don't know.
Yeah.
I have no idea.
And realistically, when you think about it, right, any immigration reform, any immigration legislation, any policies, whatever it is, are going to be by nature discriminatory in some fashion, right? Because you can't have everybody just be able to come in anytime they want and we'll figure it out after the fact. Which I think is probably part of the difficulty in getting Congress to kind of come up with some kind of legislation for this stuff, because at some point your immigration policy that you draft up is going to exclude certain people.
Right.
There's going to have to be lines drawn. Otherwise, save a bunch of money and just get rid of it altogether. Because why not? Everybody else, just let everybody in. You know, if that's the tilt you're on, don't fake it anymore. Just say what you're planning on doing. I mean, if you want to have no exclusions at all except for the bad guys, how do you know people are bad guys? You don't really know. There's no way to really tell. I mean, there's some criminal history and whatnot, but there's no winning in this process. Somebody's going to be excluded, and in the current administration, in the current makeup of Congress, ain't nobody going to be willing to pull the trigger on that and be the bad guy that says, no, you can't come here. You can't come here right now.
Right.
And we're
just going to tell you
not
to come.
We're just in this circular spiral downward where we have a failed system that cannot operate at scale. And I don't know how we get it to operate at scale without, just a massive influx of, money and people or something like that. And that wouldn't necessarily even solve the problem, because you're still having to make a decision about every individual that comes across that border, that wants to come across that border.
And there's something to be said for the justification of executing Title 42 under a public health initiative, but not COVID testing even a single person who comes through, of the 30,000 people that they're going to process over the next few weeks. Not
really
COVID
doesn't
testing
make sense.
one fucking person when they're all in one place.
Yep.
But we're doing it for COVID.
Yeah.
It's all for COVID.
It's all for COVID.
But we're not going to test anybody, and we're going to process a bunch of people and release them into the country. And I'm not trying to demonize immigrants, you know what I'm saying? That's not my point. It's letting all these dirty immigrants in. That's not what I'm getting at. What I'm getting at is it's extremely inconsistent. And that's been something we've been talking about a lot, is the ideological inconsistencies. You're talking about expelling people for public health, but you're releasing the vast majority of them into the United States without a COVID test. What are we talking about?
Yeah.
What are you doing, right? You're doing this to save your own face, which just doesn't make any sense. Like the backwards justification for it, And I'm not saying you necessarily have another choice right now.
Yeah.
That's what you're doing. Title 42 is active. This is what you have going right now.
Yep.
But to try and argue that it's inherently moral because you're doing it for the greater good when you're also restricting Americans for the greater good, but we're going to allow another bunch of immigrants into the United States for the greater good that we didn't test for the greater good, that doesn't, like, you can't just slap that on and it's just a coverall for everything. Like, that doesn't work that way, And it's concerning that it continues to get extended and extended and extended. It's all for health. It's all for COVID. It's fine. It's all for COVID.
Yeah.
It's all for the greater good. Like,
I've got a Jen Psaki answer for you. So you posed the question, like, okay, so you're expelling people off of Title 42, and then there's a good amount that you're releasing into the interior without being COVID tested, right? Well, we don't COVID test every single American every day, do we? Just to let them move around and about.
Right.
Why would we do that to a suffering migrant who just wants to flee, persecution or flee the danger from their home country? Like, are you telling me that, like, everybody should be tested every day to be able to go to work? Well, actually, you kind of are at this point. So,
Right.
yeah, it seems like a real Psaki thing she might say.
For sure.
But yeah, it doesn't make sense. It really doesn't make sense.
No.
It's for COVID, but you're not doing anything as, like, in regards to actually trying to stop the spread of COVID at that point. You have no idea whether or not these people have COVID. Under your current guidelines and things like that, yeah, every single one of those people should be tested because they're hanging out in a super packed, crammed, high population, high density situation where if one person has it, tons of people got it. That's just the way it goes, right?
Certainly by
And
the
so
argument that they've been making the whole time.
But don't test them.
And
because we can't.
You certainly can't assume that that they don't. I'm not going to say you can't assume they don't have it, but you can't assume that they're vaccinated because the vaccination rate in Haiti is probably pretty low.
I don't know if they'd have any kind of, like, structure
Only
to run
whatever
it.
we've given to them. Only whatever we've given to them. So.
Got a couple more clips here.
Yeah, I got a couple more clips coming in.
Status of migrants not expelled. COVID testing at Del Rio. So this is good. Mayorkas is going to actually talk to this.
Yes.
This is good. All right, you want to jump into those now?
Yeah, let's
Any
do it.
particular order?
There's. Let's see, just 1 second. There is the status of. Let's go with the COVID testing first because that's what we were just talking about.
Okay.
And then there is another one that's coming in. That's the COVID status of migrants on foot. And so we'll play those two when that one comes in, and then we'll go to the status of the non-expelled.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Sound good?
Action.
And they were just mentioning COVID. What is the situation there? I know that the crowd has been dispersed. Do we know who has tested positive, if people got sick, any kind of symptoms among this group of 15,000 you said?
Yes, so we did not test that population of individuals. We do not know, I do not know, I should say, if I may be perfectly accurate, I do not know whether anyone was sick with COVID. We certainly had some individuals get sick, not specifically with COVID to my knowledge, and we addressed their illnesses. In fact, we set up medical tents that had a certain standard of ability to address medical needs. It's hot in Del Rio, Texas. We had cases of dehydration. We had other situations, and that is precisely why we searched approximately 150 medical professionals to address the medical needs of that population. That is why we set up medical facilities with the appropriate equipment to address their medical needs. And I must say, what I saw of the Border Patrol and other personnel was quite frankly heroic.
Heroic. And then COVID status of migrants on foot?
Yes.
Question about what's going on at the border. Is somebody asking the foreign nationals who are walking into Del Rio, Texas and setting up camps on this side of the border for proof of vaccination or a negative COVID test?
Well, first of all, I can readdress for you or re-talk you through what steps we
That is
take.
the policy for people who fly into the country. So if somebody walks into the country right across the river, does somebody ask them to see their vaccination card?
Well, let me explain to you again, Peter, how our process works.
She hates him so much.
As individuals come across the border, and they are both assessed for whether they have any symptoms. If they have symptoms, the intention is for them to be quarantined. That is our process. They're not intending to stay here for a lengthy period of time. I don't think it's the same thing. It's not the same thing. These are individuals, as we've noted and as we've been discussed. We are expelling individuals based on Title 42 specifically because of COVID, because we want to prevent a scenario where large numbers of people are gathering, posing a threat to the community and also to the migrants themselves. So those are the policies that we put in place, in large part because, again, the CDC continues to recommend Title 42 be in place given we're facing a global pandemic.
Where's the vice president on any of this?
Thank
Isn't she
you.
supposed to be addressing the root causes of migration?
Absolutely, and she has been addressing the root causes of migration by working with countries in the region
she's like,
to ensure they have the assistance they need, to reduce the number of people who are coming and trying to make those journeys across the border. We've actually seen some reductions in some of those numbers. That doesn't change the fact that this is a very challenging situation in Del Rio.
Yeah.
We're working to implement our policies, and we're working to ensure we are also addressing root causes.
All right, let's talk about that one for a minute.
So there's two issues that I saw with this, right? One of them, she says, they're not the same thing, Peter. They're not the same. You have an estimated 12,000 people by Alejandro Mayorkas's numbers that are going to be processed through this, what do they call them? The removal proceedings, right? So those people are going to have their data collected on them, and then they're going to go to, presumably they have a relative in the country that they're going to go and stay with until the date comes, right?
Yeah.
So they're not working, right? Which is totally fine. Understand you don't have a job, you don't have a green card because you're not going to stay here. You're waiting to be removed, right? But if you have COVID and we didn't test you, you're going to go and live with somebody who lives in America, most likely has a job, probably has other people living in their house. So they're going to go to the grocery store, to work, everything else. But it's not the same thing. It's not the same thing if they have COVID or not because they're not going to stay here.
Yeah.
Which is fine. I grant that. But if you're going to be here for any period of time, we're doing all of this for public health, test them at the border. What are we talking about? What are we talking about? That's not racist. That's not ridiculous. If they're going to be here for any more than we're getting you on a flight and you're getting out of here, give them a fucking COVID test. It takes 5 seconds.
Yep.
Give them a rapid test. It takes 5 seconds. Are they going to be here for more than 3 days? Give them a delayed test. I waited 3 days to find out whether or not I have COVID. I support my entire family. Waited 3 days to find out whether or not I had COVID.
It's a long time.
Give them a delayed test.
Yeah.
What, do they have 3 days? Give them a fucking delayed test. You have their phone number, right? You're so confident that you can get in contact with them. Give them a delayed test. Find out. Do it in batches of 20 like I had to wait for. What are we talking about? What are we talking about here? This doesn't make any sense. This is so contradictory and so convoluted. It hurts my brain to even try and explain it to anybody. Like, no, they look at me the same way that you do, but even more confused because they really don't get it. You at least understand there's no hope.
I'm
It's
just
fucked,
laughing.
right? The people who don't get it, truly, they're like, I don't know, but why is it that way? Because they don't care. Because they don't give a fuck about you. Because they don't live there. Anywhere any of these immigrants are going to go, they don't live there. They don't give a fuck. They don't care about you. That's why they live in Washington, D.C. The only people that live there are people who work in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
They don't care. It doesn't matter to them. They don't care. They work for the federal government. They have all the tests they want. They're already vaccinated. They have anything they need.
Yep,
They don't care.
Yep.
They don't care about you.
Hard no, they don't. Yeah, they don't care about you, and
I don't even remember what my second point was.
I think the only thing they do care about is how they are perceived, right? And so they want to come off as not being discriminatory, falling back against Title 42, as using that as kind of their scapegoat to essentially continue the same policies that have been in place for a long time. The only difference is now they're using Title 42 to back up their expulsions of these people.
Yes.
Because otherwise, there would just be this massive outcry about, racist deportations or racist refusal of migrants coming in, fleeing from a disastered country like Haiti.
Yeah.
That would be the narrative. Like if Trump was in office, that's the narrative. But since Trump isn't in office, now it's all about messaging and image and making sure that we come off as the betters, And again, we talked about this before. Why they don't care about you is because they're elite and you are not. Like, it doesn't have to make sense. They just make calls, and because they're protected, they don't give a shit. They don't care about any of these people at all. They only care about their public image based off of what they do to these people. So they just have to protect their image, try to pass it off. Luckily for them, they have Title 42 to go with, to use as the scapegoat. But it's a disaster every which way, and all they're doing is trying to cover their butt and look good.
Yes. And then she really tries to trick him and go back, because I think this is the day that they announced the new requirements for international travel. So she really was going to try and go back and be like, oh, well, I can go over the new requirements again. He's like, I'm not talking about people flying here. I'm asking people crossing the border on foot. It's very troubling. It's very, very troubling. And the level of convolution is really what troubles me, because it takes, and I'm definitely not saying like you guys need to rely on us to disseminate information for you, but I'm saying it takes someone like us who's willing to invest the time to look at all of those different things to understand that she is lying. She is lying to the American public right now, and people don't know it.
And she loves it.
It's unacceptable all of the time to lie, but it's different when you're saying something everyone knows isn't true, because it's an open thing. Everyone knows you're lying. You're saying something the government has to say because you feel like you have to say it, and we all know that you're lying. You're lying in a fashion now that you're openly deceiving people who will be affected by this when you will not.
Yep.
That's what's so dark about it, is that people don't know.
And they just accept it as fact. They're like, well, yeah, no, we're not doing that. I mean, come on now. I don't understand this. Was there the status of migrants not expelled? That was another clip. I don't know if we got to that one.
Yes, we did not get to that one. That's another one. And then I will send you the clip, because Pete Ducey also asked about Kamala Harris. Like, what is Kamala Harris doing,
Yeah. Where is Kamala? Where is the VP right now?
Yes.
Does anybody know? Is she taking any action on this whatsoever?
Yeah, so I'll send you the clip, because someone asked her specifically about what is she doing? Like, what is she actually doing? Because she's supposed to be. And then I have a question for you, a discussion question for that.
Okay.
About Kamala Harris, because I think it'll be there are going to be a lot of people, especially when we get famous. Oh, so you're going to attack the black woman? What about Mike Pence? So I have a very good question for you.
God,
about that.
I'm so excited. All right. Boom.
The people who were under the bridge, you've talked about, some of them have gone to Mexico, some of them have been flown to Haiti. The others, are they spread out at CPB holding facilities, or have some been released into the community or released to family members awaiting hearing?
So you ask
What's
a very
their status?
So let me be clear. So some have been returned to Haiti, indeed. Others have been moved to different processing facilities along the border in light of operational capacity.
Train wreck, bro.
And then many of them will be returned to Haiti from there. And if any of the exceptions apply, they will not be returned to Haiti, but placed in immigration enforcement proceedings. I should say released is a very general term, and I may need to drill down on that if I may.
We know what it
Individuals, some of them are detained. Some of them are placed on alternatives to detention. We remain in touch with them. We monitor them to ensure their appearance in court at the designated time of appearance. Does that answer your question?
No, it doesn't answer anybody's question, dude. It's the same question everybody's always been asking. What guarantee do you have that people are going to show back up? You're going to be able to find them? Your surveillance ain't that good, dude. Yeah. You just droned a bunch of kids in Afghanistan. We're not that great. Oh, my God. All right. And then this one is, what is Kamala Harris? What is she actually doing?
So we know that the vice president has been tasked with addressing the root causes of migration. A Democratic congressman from Texas told CNN, yesterday that the Vice President's trip to Mexico and Central America had no impact. So first I'm wondering if the administration can just detail some tangible examples of the actions in addressing the root causes of migration that have had a tangible, an actual impact. And then secondly, what specific root causes is the Vice President currently addressing to help curb Haitian migration from places like Chile and Brazil?
Well, I think as the Vice President and the President have both conveyed, this is going to be a long-term effort. And what the focus is on is addressing root causes like corruption, like economic circumstances that are impacting people and prompting them to want to come to the United States. So that requires working with governments, both to put in place new migration proceedings and processes or limitations sometimes at borders. We've seen some impacts of those over the course of the last several months. It also includes providing assistance and engaging closely with these leaders on what steps can be taken. And the Vice President has been deeply engaged in this. But again, as it relates to Haiti, as it relates to our broken immigration system, the clear step that needs to be taken is an immigration bill needs to pass Congress. It's a broken system, one that is ineffective, one that is not moral in many cases at this point in time. It's long overdue. There are a lot of Republicans out there giving speeches about how outraged they are about the situation at the border, not many who are putting forward solutions or steps that we could take. So we're a little tired of the speeches. We'd like to partner on solutions and working together to address this problem that has not been partisan in the past. Go ahead.
Thank you, Jen.
Okay, so my first initial instinct on this one, right, is this goes to show you their frame of mind in the Biden administration, like truly how they foresee their role as governing bodies, right? She is upset at Congress people for talking shit on the current policy and how it's working and then not offering up solutions. Yes. I will give her that, right? But she is speaking as if like they need Congress to work with us. Like we need bills from Congress so that we can do these things, right? And I guess maybe that's just because Border Patrol is a federal executive agency under DHS.
Yeah.
But it should not be the executive's problem to deal with. This is something that Congress should take up and absolutely should take on their own shoulders, and the executive branch should execute whatever it is that Congress decides to do. They're running things from the top, and they're pissed that they're not getting their low-level support from Congress. So they're trying to run things from the top. They're trying to run things under the unified executive theory, like we've talked about before, like Joe Biden is the king, and that's the throne.
Right.
And they're wanting Congress to essentially back their plays. But they're the one leading the charge. They're the one setting the tone of what they want the policy to be, and they're just expecting Congress to jump onto that, right? It shows their disconnect to how the system is supposed to work.
Right.
And at that point, I've already said the republic is dead, obviously. If you're the executive waiting for Congress to get on your page so that you can... We all want to be on the same tilt here, guys. We're leading the charge. You're supposed to follow us here and back us up with legislation. Backwards from how it's supposed to work. Period. Congress passes the legislation. The executive executes that legislation.
When seen as most of the border is red states, it doesn't seem like it should be very difficult to work with Republicans on how to get immigration done, right? And immigration reform done, especially like we talked about 2 years ago. We like the seeds of it have already been there,
Yeah.
So there is definitely hope that you could get back to a discussion on that one day.
Yeah.
I think that it's
the problem I would foresee, right, is given the divide in Congress, the continual divide, like it keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. If a Democrat legislation is in power, right, or legislature is in power, right? If you have Democrats in both majority positions in both the House and the Senate, not to mention the executive branch, people are so polarized, even in Congress now, that there is absolutely no way they're going to let Republicans from Republican states, whose states are affected by this, who probably have solutions that they could offer. They should be put in the hot seat. These are your states, guys. You need to be leading the charge here. What do you need? they would never, ever in a million years be able to put the Republicans up front to lead the charge because those are their states. They would never be allowed to do that because they'd be seen as like, working with the enemy, if you will.
Judas.
You can't be doing that.
Like
They're
Benedict.
Republicans. They're evil. You have told us for so long that they're evil people who want nothing but bad things for everybody. We can't work with them. They need to work with us. But you guys aren't the ones in the states there, bro. That's just not how that works.
Yeah.
So that's just my take on that.
No, I think that's fair, and I think that instead of, do you want another one of these?
Yeah, I don't remember where I put my. There it is.
And instead of
I also take a pee real quick.
Instead of being willing to provide not even Republicans any credit, but working bipartisan with some Republicans, they would rather. And I made this point to Colin when we were watching the videos. They would rather nation build in South America as they just insisted we shouldn't be doing. That's not America's mission anymore. And I think that we would have a hard time arguing, and it's another one of those weird backwards things of like arguing which country is fucked up more, but arguing which country we messed up the worst, because there's no doubt that America has had a hand in negatively affecting many South American countries as well as the Middle East, right? So I have a hard time trying to decide which one deserves our dollars more if we're going to be nation building. But the idea that we're not going to nation build in the Middle East because we don't nation build, but we're going to nation build in South America because it's the right thing to do, doesn't really make any sense to me. I mean, I guess I understand the geographical implication of it, that they're coming here, but it doesn't. That's not the only answer. You know, investing our money in other countries south of the border is not the only answer. And so it's frustrating to me and doesn't make sense to me that that's the solution. Instead of working with Republicans in any way, shape, or form, we'll just throw our money south of the border because it's worked so well in the past. That our first step is to ensure that we deal with corruption in many of these countries. It doesn't make any sense to me. You know, I don't know why that's a better use of our money.
Because I think part of the deal here is that normally when we talk about nation building, right, we're thinking about how it's been done in the Middle East. Thank you very much, sir.
Yes, sir.
Where it's done with the military, right? And contractors and things like that after a military occupation or something. Whereas you're looking at it from like an outcomes perspective. You're doing the same things in a different way. You're still nation building in a different way through diplomatic channels, if you will.
Right.
It's not as. That's why, like, they're not saying, opponents to this type of stuff are not saying you're nation building down in South America. You absolutely are nation building. You're trying to nation build all over the place. That's the whole deal. The only difference here is you get away with not calling it that because there's not boots in the ground. I mean, I think that's why I think you see it for what it is, because we're looking at the actual implications of what is happening. We're still shelling money out of the country towards another country in hopes of making it a quote unquote better place according to our worldview and values.
Right. We talk about all of these things on our social media, so I just want to throw that up there real quick, that I am at Salt of the Street on Twitter and at alpaca_Donovan on Instagram. Colin is at Big Bird Offie on both of those things. You can find all this on our website, saltofthestreets.com, where you can also find our Instagram at Salt of the Streets, our YouTube. Thank you for joining us there on YouTube at Salt of the Streets. Facebook, Salt of the Streets. We also have our Patreon, patreon.com/Salt of the Streets. You can go there if you want to be a patron for us. We obviously appreciate every single one of those dollars. If you need a haircut, go on down to swellblended.com. I need a haircut, obviously. If you need a skateboard, go down to Location Skate Shop in West Bremerton. Our wives are also very talented. Lexi Kayo is Colin's wife on Twitch, and my wife is at Leggings and Aprons on Instagram. If you need some cakes, it's a good deal. So
it's a good deal. Or if you just appreciate pretty cakes.
If you just
check that stuff
pretty
out.
Cakes, yeah. So something I wanted to ask you about, right? And I'm going to offer a little bit of a solution, or you can go first if you want, and then I'll say my answer. But why do you think Kamala Harris is taking more heat than Pence did when he was in office, right?
Oh, yeah, I got
a lot of questions about Kamala Harris. What's she doing? Why is she doing this? Why aren't we seeing her? Why didn't she go to the border, I'm not, you know me. I think those are all fair criticisms, but why Colin? Let me straw man this. Why Colin? Is it because she's a black woman? Why is she receiving so much more coverage and attention than Mike Pence did?
So the way I was going to put it was not going to be solely based off of her race, right? We do know that was a factor in her her
Definitely.
pick.
In her
Obviously
selection,
they literally talked about it. But the reason why everybody's asking about it is because she has, it's not the Biden administration, it's the Biden-Harris administration.
Right.
She has been so injected into the executive office that she is basically co-president to Joe Biden. That's kind of the way I would see it, based off of all their infusion of her everywhere to try to utilize her as much as possible, to try to make her out in public, and then they realize that they can't do that because she's a terrible, terrible human being. But that's why everybody's asking about it, in my opinion, is they made her so front and center as a vice president, more than any other vice president, I would probably argue, in history, that people go, okay, well, she's so important. Where the hell is she?
Yeah.
What is she doing? Oh, she's running diplomatic back channels to try to nation build in South America. I'm sorry, she's actively working all the time. But that's not good enough.
What does that mean?
You need to be out in front in public because they told us that's what you're here for, is to be. You're not second in command. You're a female. You're a. I love that sound.
She's like, you pet my face.
Yep. Now, she got a ball in her mouth?
Yes.
Yeah. And she tried to breathe through that. It sounds so weird, man. That's the shit of nightmares. But yeah, that's, if I had to venture guess, that's why. They propped her up to be a centerpiece, and she's missing.
And my answer is very, very similar. The only thing of importance that Mike Pence really did was at the end. He was like the head of the COVID response team, and he did exactly what he was supposed to be doing.
I mean, he was on TV like every day.
He was out there every day.
Yeah.
He was out on TV every single day, answering questions, doing what he's supposed to be doing, announcing the answers. This is the PPE. This is what we did. This is this. He wasn't. They weren't looking. None of us were looking to Mike Pence for concrete results on what was happening because he was just overseeing people doing their job.
Yeah. William Wallace is out. Thanks for hanging out. He says, great stream. Appreciate you, buddy.
We have seen Kamala Harris be elevated to a point, like you said, that, she is going to tackle the immigration crisis, the root causes of immigration.
She's going to solve this problem.
So we would assume, by you saying that something is going to get better if she's going to spend 4 fucking years working on the immigration crisis. It's been like 9 months now. We've continued to see. There was another question that I don't have in clips, but it was actually from Tamara Keith of NPR. She was asking, it's seeming like, every month there's a different crisis at the border, whether it's like, the unaccompanied children that we were seeing, or whether it's now, this deal with the Haitians. Like, it seems like we're seeing, is there some plan to do like a big comprehensive immigration something, And Alejandro Mayorkas' response was, we dealt with, the unaccompanied children back in March. And so
we dealt with that.
Yeah, we dealt with that already, and it's down from 77 hours or whatever it was that they were in a facility to like under 25 hours now, and so we've got it all handled. It's like no big deal. That's awesome. What about this? Because this just happened. Do you know? There was another question.
Where's AOC?
I have here that actually may have to do with. It is this clip, and it's the one that I just sent you that will play that has to do. I don't remember exactly what I was going to say, so we will play this clip here, and it is relevant to what I was just talking about, and then I am sure that I will remember what I was asking.
Review of asylum definition?
Yes, because right now there is a review going on of the way that asylum is being interpreted, so that it can be broadened, right? Alejandro Mayorkas makes the point that it was very narrow under Donald Trump. It was very difficult to get asylum, and so they're looking at potentially making it broader. That's what this question is about, and so it pertains. I completely lost my train of thought, but this pertains to that, and I'm sure I'll remember what I was talking about.
Fantastic.
Now, with respect to the asylum process, that is an independent process, and I'm not sure I understood your question. If you're asking about the definition of a particular social group, and just for everyone's benefit, the asylum laws provide that the first step in an asylum process is a claim of credible fear. Economic need, flight from generalized violence does not qualify as credible fear, but rather credible fear is credible fear of persecution by reason of one's membership in a particular social group. What is the definition of a particular social group was significantly constrained That's an understatement in the Trump administration, and there is a body of law that speaks to that definition, and that definition is currently under review.
Mr. Secretary, if I may, forgive me for just the follow-up on this point.
Yes.
The question was, if this administration were to take a more permissive stance toward that definition, could this be what we've just experienced in the last several weeks? Just the first of many similar instances to occur in this country on the border.
What instance are you referring to?
Well,
I'm sorry.
we have 15,000 migrants that the United States government has had to now process and
So
What instance?
we determine
what do you think?
The standards to apply in a claim of persecution according to the principles that a government should have, both domestically and in the international architecture, with the treatment of individuals who are fleeing persecution by reason of their membership in a particular social group. It is not a tool of deterrence to define what a particular social group means.
That just is a
Yeah.
convoluted deal, dude.
So that was my point, was about the multiple different occurrences,
Yeah.
right? And Mayor Wickett says, what instances that you're talking about? I don't know. You just said 30,000 interactions happened over the last 2 weeks between Asian migrants at Del Rio.
How about that one?
Yeah, what the fuck do you think I'm talking about? Like, what is that? What kind of question is that?
Like, what instance are you referring to? The one that we're going through right now, asshole.
Yeah.
Your job to fix and run. What do you mean?
And did you
You're
love
fucking fired, Frank?
Did you love the hit of it being moral? You know, of what
Oh,
a
yeah.
government should do, right? That's what we're doing. What a government should do.
Oh yeah.
This is it, huh? This is exactly. I hate it.
It's terrible, Bryn. It's terrible. It's just, again, every time we hit one of these southern border issues, it's just a bunch of bullshit, a bunch of covering your ass, and let's move on to the next thing, because there ain't no way we're touching this bad boy. We're not fixing it. We're not making any attempts.
Yeah.
Kamala Harris is on it. It's a long-term deal. You know, it's long-term. You know, we can't measure what's going on right now. It's been less than a year, man. All right, this is long-term. She just needs you need to set it and forget it, and just hope everything else is okay between now and then. Nobody is serious about the border. Nobody is serious about it on the right or the left, man.
Right.
The right says throw up a wall so that nobody can come in, and we can just let in whoever the hell we want one by one. We could slow the process. We could do whatever we want. Let's just shut it the fuck down until we figure out what the hell's going on. And then on the left, you basically have the opposite. If you do not think that the language that they are talking about now about extending TPS, reopening TPS.
Absolutely.
To this, you don't think there's going to be more surges? There's people leaving right now.
Yeah.
If they're like, hey, I can get temporary protected status, I just got to fucking get there. Let's do this.
What's the population of Haiti?
Ooh, let's Google it. One of the
And
nice
then
things about having the laptop right in front, bro, I don't even have to
The last
turn.
thing that I wanted to hit on this, and then we can move into. I also decided during this conversation, I also want you to look up after this, because I'm going to finish one of these sentences.
11.26 million in 2019.
Jesus Christ.
A lot of people on Little Island.
So we'll see. I also would like you to
And that's
look
only
up,
half the island, by the way. Yeah, because the DR's on the other side.
I would like you to look up whether or not the Bob Woodward Robert Costa book is out yet.
Ooh. Rampage.
I don't remember what it's called.
Yeah, I'll check it.
Because if it's out, then I want to go and buy it tomorrow and delay the conversation about Milley until next episode and commit to reading it in the next 2 weeks, because it's probably a relatively short book.
Peril. Let's see. Peril. That's what
I think
we
the other
call
one
it.
was called Fear.
Yeah.
The Donald Trump book was called
Rage
Fear.
and Fear. There's, I think, 2 of them about that. Let me
I
check
have
on
one that I haven't
Amazon.
read yet.
Let me check Peril. Bob Woodward. It available instantly on Kindle, and I can have it. I could buy it right now and have it here on Monday.
Okay, so I'm going to go to Barnes & Noble tomorrow, and I will buy that book, and I will read it before the next episode so we can have a longer discussion about General Milley, and we can make it a whole deal.
I think I'm going to get the audiobook version of it to also test those waters, and then we'll have a fucking book review.
Deal. Okay, so we'll talk about General Milley on the next episode,
Yes,
right?
because all the Milley stuff that came out was pulled out of that book.
Yes.
So the last point that I wanted to hit on this, and then we can move on and talk about AUKUS for a little bit, and then do sports, and then we can get out of here.
And we technically hit all of them.
Yes, yeah, because budget was a last-minute thing that we threw on there because
Yeah.
we're looking at a government shutdown. Honestly, it's difficult to report on because
It's all because there's no real legislation. There's nothing to actually look at. It's all posturing. It's the balance between the hard infrastructure bill and the $3.5 trillion budget bill,
Right.
reconciliation
With the American
bill.
Family Plan mixed in it.
and the squad's getting involved, and they're trying to hold things hostage. The Iron Dome thing, AOC crying because all of Congress minus 9 people voted to fund the Iron Dome thing, and she didn't, and she started crying once she found the camera, made sure she could be on camera crying.
I hate her so much.
It's terrible, right? Just the worst.
She's the worst person.
Yeah.
I got invited to the Met Gala, a $35,000 ticket, completely comped, but tax the rich, right?
Tax
I
the
hate
rich,
her
baby.
so
She is
much.
the worst. And actually, that story is the thing I wanted to ask you about populism in. But let's hit our
AUKUS is
AUKUS. I'm just trying to get that thing drilled in my AUKUS.
And I don't have the exact numbers, so I don't know if you have those written down somewhere. I have the general story, but not the exact numbers. So
Guardian did a pretty good article on it.
The last thing I wanted to say, the U.S. envoy to Haiti resigned because of the expulsion of Haitian migrants back to Haiti without the ability to apply for asylum under Title 42.
And Psaki gave him the business.
Yes. Oh,
Gave
well,
him
he
the
didn't,
business.
he didn't bring up these issues when he was here. Yeah,
No.
all kinds of shit.
I find that relatively racist, Psaki.
She sucks. She is
so bad.
She is the worst. I hate her as much as I hate AOC.
And I figured out the hair thing, by the way.
Didn't it?
Because she is on an elevated position and a podium.
She's looking down a lot.
She's looking down, and when she talks, she does this kind of like she moves her head a lot,
Yes.
right? So you can slowly see her hair, depending on how animated she's getting and how condescending she's being.
Yes.
It moves more, and then she has to flip it up. So you can definitely tell when she's being super condescending to whoever it is she's talking about, because right afterwards she does that, or she has to go into the binder and look for something.
Yeah.
That's where that came from. Out of all those clips, go back and rewatch them. Tell me I'm fucking wrong.
Isn't it awesome?
It's El Terrible. So, do you want to lead this one off, or I feel like I can just start reading.
The AUKUS Treaty, right? You have the numbers, but I can give just kind of the general idea of it. The
Yep.
AUKUS Treaty is a new treaty between Australia, the UK, and the United
up on
States. We
here.
talked about it a little bit earlier for nuclear submarines, right? And this is for nuclear submarines. Were they engineered by America, built in the UK, and then sent to Australia? Is that exactly how this is breaking down?
That I can't tell you.
Because the UK is involved somehow, right?
Yes.
I don't remember what town. I saw the town they were supposed to be built in, but I don't remember what it said. It didn't sound like an American town, but either way, right? This causes Australia to cancel an existing order that it had with France for multi-billion, like $80 billion, I think, for traditionally
$90 billion.
$90 billion
Yep.
for traditionally powered submarines, which is what, through just gas? Like just enormous amounts of petroleum?
It's probably diesel. Yeah,
Diesel,
marine
but
grade diesel. Yeah,
fuel. Yeah. So,
and I'm not.
Obviously, France is super pissed. France was not involved in any of these discussions at all, so they just lost out on $90 billion, a whole bunch of jobs, and all kinds of stuff
Yeah.
without anybody saying anything.
And in their defense too, that's been the way things have been with Australia's weapon supplies. France has had they've had the contract traditionally, historically.
Yeah.
The real problem here is that this AUKUS is essentially being built to combat more aggressive Chinese
In the
military
Indo-Pacific
movements.
is what they're calling it.
And Australia is hard yes, they need that area covered. They're just down south. They can be right up in there. I mean, there's a reason Australia was on our side when Japan was the enemy at that point, right? During World War II. And so...
Oh, shit, mate.
Yeah. And since we have such a special relationship with the UK, obviously it goes hand in hand. France doesn't really have a dog in this fight. They don't really care what China is up to at this point. We're
Right.
leading the charge on that one. So we took kind of onus with this, with good old Boris Johnson and what the hell's his name? The Scott
Prime
Morrison,
Minister.
the waste of
Scott
space
Morrison.
authoritarian piece of crap of Australia.
Yeah, he's no good.
He is no good. he's Mr. Let's throw our citizens in camps because they may or may not have COVID. But yeah, we're looking at a number of submarines coming up over the next 18 months for assembling the new Australian nuclear-powered submarine fleet, which will be built in Adelaide. Adelaide. I'm going to look that up. I'm going to put that into Google Maps because I want to know where Adelaide is.
That's what I'm
it's
saying.
in Australia.
Okay, so it's in Australia.
Yeah.
Okay.
On the southern portion of Australia.
Where the fuck does the UK come in hand then?
Probably just because they're part of that intelligence sharing trifecta. The three eyes, I believe, right?
Oh yes,
Isn't that them?
yeah. Okay, yes.
I believe.
Yeah. So France is obviously super pissed.
France is pissed.
They pulled their diplomats from the United States and the UK, bring them back for further instruction so they can send them back, know how to deal with themselves. It's not a good deal. The United States, let's see, there's a call with Macron that is coming in the next coming weeks about the submarine deal and the U.S.-Australia deal, and he's not happy about it. They haven't even pinned down an actual date for it yet. It's still in like loose discussions because France is so fucking unhappy about it.
Well, and the fact that like their agreement with France was the agreement spelled the end of a $90 billion contract Australia signed with the French company Naval Group in 2016. So it's relatively fresh as far as these massive government contracts. And as far as France is concerned, they just see the U.S. coming in there with their swinging their big dick energy going, we in charge now, France. You can go sit down, shut up. We're in charge. We're getting these people nuclear submarines. We're messing with China right now. You need to just sit back and chill. Hey, Chloe, quit scratching, sweetheart. Don't be scratching. I know. You're an itchy girl. She's got lots of allergies, poor kiddo. The weird thing that came out of this right away, right, was the like almost immediate removal of the ambassadorships to the United States, which is an unprecedented move. It's considering Western allies, that is a huge deal. That's something we do with like Russia.
Right.
When
we've
when
done
we
that
accuse
with
them
Russia.
when we accuse them of hacking, meddling in the elections and stuff like that, they get pissed. They pull the diplomats. It doesn't really matter. It's Russia. What are we doing? This is France, bro. This is a Western power, part of NATO, that is supposed to be part of this alliance kind of deal that we have.
Yeah.
But since Russia is kind of not the bad guy right now, it's more about China. Things have shifted, and they're not really that involved because they're on the other side of the world. They're not really, it'll change if, say, like if tomorrow Russia and China had some kind of military pact, France is being like, you guys gonna let us in yet?
Yeah.
Or what are we doing here?
And I think that this is a very emotional plea. So if it doesn't make any sense, make sure you tell me, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm sure part of it's because of the media that I've been consuming. I've been learning more and more about the Revolutionary War, right? So I've had like a growing sympathy for France. That like they're just one of the OG American allies, like literally from the very beginning.
From the beginning.
And I've been like
literally from the beginning.
Yeah, literally from the very beginning. Like helped us maintain or achieve independence,
Mm-hmm.
And I also feel for the fact that they've seen these insane COVID restrictions, we talked about the grocery stores and things like that. I mean, insane COVID restrictions, children being arrested and shit like that.
Fucked up, man.
I'm troubled. And I know that it's not 1776 anymore, and that's, like I said, I know that it's an emotional thing because it's very old, but that's, like, it seems like it shouldn't be completely forgotten that, like, we kind of forever owe you, like, a little bit of a debt because you, like, helped us get here. And now we're the dominant power in the world because we're that guy. And it doesn't feel
Big
right
dick
to me
energy.
to just...
Fuck France?
Yeah, to just fuck France. Don't worry about it,
Yeah, I got to kind of think about that one because
it's an emotional plea.
It is, because when you look at France, right?
It's a patriotic plea, is what it is.
It's tough because we have a lot of history with France, right? UK's got a lot of bad history with France, but that goes further back than our.
Yes.
Obviously they were the ones that helped us kick the British's ass,
right?
And that was a deal, but in 2021, like France. So I'm just having to.
They're not what they used to be.
They ain't what they used to be. Right.
That's a big bomb I dropped on you. You don't have to answer it.
Yeah.
Now. It's Because they're not what they used to be. Because there's something to be said for the fact that their government is imposing these restrictions on them.
Yeah.
You know,
It's kind of why I have a lot of mixed feelings about giving Australia a bunch of nuclear-powered submarines.
Well, and that's what I was talking about earlier about the surveillance technology that we could potentially be giving over to Australia in a time where they're already trying to, spy on their citizens. Hey, send us a pic. Make sure it's within 15 minutes so that we know that you're where you said that you were going to be.
I got a problem with that.
That's not a way to go about things. I mean, they just decided that everybody who works in the construction trades now has to adhere to these new health guidelines, which requires you to have at least one dose of the vaccine before you go back to work in October.
Yep.
There was an enormous protest outside of the Capitol because of that.
Union members turning on their own people.
It's insanity. It does not make any sense. And so I have a deep concern within my distrust of the government that they are providing Australia technology that will help them further oppress their citizens, which I don't agree with.
Yeah.
And I don't agree with it happening in France. And that's one of the reasons I think I feel sympathetic is because they're one of our OG personal liberty allies, and they're oppressing their own citizens right now. And this is very hopeful, but I am concerned at the idea of disassociating ourselves even further in a time where people in America seem to be trying to embrace their freedoms, and the people of France's freedoms are being increasingly taken away from them. We now have really no connections to Hong Kong anymore because China controls everything that they do. Yep. They just begged for an entire year 2 years ago for us to help them, singing our own songs, waving our own flags in their streets because they can't defend themselves, and we didn't do anything. And now they're under Chinese control, and there's nothing we can do about it.
Yep.
If we isolate France, and they're also isolated from other European allies, and they eventually have no choice but to turn somewhere else or whatever. I don't know. That's a lot of ifs, But I am very concerned that this could start a trend in that direction.
Yeah.
And turns away one of our allies, that also the people start to lose faith because now they don't have any other inspiration. They're not seeing anything from the United States because we don't give a shit about them anymore, I'm very concerned about that. You've talked a lot to me about kind of the Cold War that we're in with communism, and things like that. If that's where we're at, if we're actively fighting a communist ideology from spreading around the globe, then we shouldn't be isolating people who inherently and deep down hold a liberty value that we think deserves a place on the planet.
It's kind of funny is because I think about this, right? I think about it, and I liken it to something that I talked about earlier today with my hesitation on kind of supporting the police unions during fighting against COVID mandates, right? I have sympathy for them in some regards because I'm founded on liberty and freedom, okay? But it's also kind of there's a lot of anti-sympathy there because you did this to us and yourselves because you allowed this bullshit to happen.
Right.
With France, you kind of think the same way. I mean, France
certainly,
and I understand that France has kind of been there as an OG people for a long time, right?
I acknowledge that it's an emotional deal,
because their version of liberty is fundamentally different than ours.
Yeah.
Right. It's very much more populist. It's very much anti-elitist. It's kind of socialistic in a way. It's very communistic in a way. You can have the freedoms that we decide you can have, and then none of the bad elites can tell you otherwise, right? It's different fundamentally, whereas ours is individually centered, right? Theirs is given to them by the government.
Yes.
And they cut off people's heads in that revolution and stuff for that. I mean, if you were an aristocrat, bye-bye. And so I understand the sympathy, but they get like half points to me. They get half points.
Certainly.
Like I get it. Well, yeah, I think that would be a good way. It's like I'll give you a half point of sympathy for me because, yeah, bro, I'm not okay with what you're doing to your own people. I'm not okay with what Australia's doing to their own people. But we need a new version of neocon, right? There's a little kind of classically neoconservative, I don't want to say world policing, but like generally not being afraid to get involved in other governments' businesses around the world if it protects our interests.
A
right?
re-embrace of American exceptionalism almost.
Ooh, that's a better way to put it. I like that. But yeah, it's weird. I kind of feel for France, but I'm also kind of like, fuck them.
Yeah.
At the same time, I definitely agree with you though that the trend is not going a good way. And if
You dig my Cold War argument better?
yeah, man, like the way things are looking with the rise of authoritarianism now,
Yeah.
they should be on our side. We should be as bad as we are at it, because we have our own problem with authoritarianism, obviously. But man, people, our Western values countries, man, we got to stick together in this because it's about to be the game. We're about to be the minority in the
Right.
world that believes in liberty,
Right.
and that outlook is. There's that old, and I'm trying to remember exactly what it is, but it was like when there's like a meme, if you will, of whenever somebody tries to like go to war with France, their first instinct is, "Whoa, we give up.
Yeah.
Come on in." Right. I don't remember what it is. There's a better version of it, but they do that with ideology now. You know, it's whatever the prevailing winds are saying from the EU. That's just what they do.
Yeah.
And it's not a good place to go, man. Like this centralized government control has been going on for decades now. Ever since they agreed to get involved with the EU like that. Like that's not good. You're removing liberty from people because you're deciding now that not only as individual states or provinces of your nation, where you have a republic in place to kind of make sure everybody is representative, if you will, you're now doing that with other nations that don't exactly share your values. Maybe similar-ish,
Right.
but, not all the EU nations have similar values, hence
Right.
Brexit and shit, right? So I don't want to say they're a lost cause at this point because I think we could probably still bring them back from the brink if
France
we needed
needs
to.
us, Colin.
Maybe,
France needs us.
French people love civil war. Historically, they really do.
I love you.
It's a thing. Bastille Day is a huge day over there, and there's always massive protests and shit like that. They're a huge protesting country. It's a very different nation. Yeah, they're westernized, but God, they're different, right?
Yeah.
If they were to go into a civil war against, and it was authoritarian versus liberty, we'd be there to back up the liberty portion because they still the homies.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's tough right now, man. Like I don't want to be cool with France, but
They need us, man.
they need us, bro.
France needs us, man.
And we ain't. And we're not like. I wish we were the exception, but the only thing stopping us from being Australia and France right now is the remaining people that are not okay with the massive authoritarian takeover.
Yeah.
And we are definitely the minority. We're
need
about
us.
to be shut out of King County.
Kitsap too. Kitsap's looking at it too.
They're
man.
looking at it too. I was doing some research last night to make sure there was no extra movement on that.
gonna
Thank
be
God I
all
didn't
of us,
find
man.
anything, but
It's gonna be
gonna
us
be all
all
of us
soon.
We're all going to be showing your papers.
Is there anything else? We're obviously going to be keeping up on this. There are obviously some calls, like I said, scheduled with Macron and some other things.
Yeah, this is definitely going to evolve.
We will definitely be keeping an eye on this. Is there anything else that you want to hit on this particular topic?
Can I squeeze in my populist thing real quick before you get on?
Yes.
I think it should be quick. So I've been thinking a lot about like the rise of our populist politicians. Right, Trump, federally popular politician. He was one of the first rise in populists. AOC, populist politician. Like in the age of social media, populism wins a lot of races, right? Regardless of however you're perceived in your district. If you can raise a shit ton of money from the grassroots all over the country, odds are the way politics works with money in there, it's a lot easier for you to get reelected if you're nationally popular, regardless of where you're from. Would you agree that at this point there's a massive increase in society's interest in populist political candidates?
Largely.
Largely.
Yes.
Now.
Yeah. In different ways, but yes.
And especially on the federal scale, the national scale.
Yes.
You know, these people are politicians. I mean, they're celebrities now.
Yes.
Right? I don't like that on the national level, obviously. It seems like a really bad idea because AOC being a representative of a district now doesn't necessarily need to represent her district if she's got national support.
Right.
How do you feel about state level populist candidates? Not many people know their state congress people. because they're not necessarily populist. There's a reason you don't know their name and you know everybody at the federal level.
Right.
Do you think that might be a better balance if you had populist candidates that were populist at their local state district level, within the state?
And I would disagree, because I think that those candidates are populist to the people who show up, but no one pays attention to their local representatives. You know what I'm saying? No one. I don't know who my local representative is. I know Derek Kilmer, right, is our federal one. But even then,
I'm just like state like Drew Hansen and
that's
those people.
I don't know shit about him.
Yeah.
So
all we know is we can't get a hold of him.
I know that I hate him and that his policies don't represent me. But I'm also a minority in many of the things that I have reached out to him about. So I think that they are populist to the people that live in that area. Unfortunately, we don't see it that way because we're a minority in this area. So to us, none of our candidates will ever be populist because they're never going to represent our views, because our views are not the dominant ones. Okay. The dominant views in our areas, because those are the examples I can really use, right?
Yeah. Well, because that's who I'm talking about.
And the things that I can use specifically about Drew Hansen, the interactions that I've had with him over the internet, are he doesn't give a shit what I think about guns.
Nope.
He doesn't care about any of those things. The people in our area want magazine capacity bans. They want an assault weapons ban because that's what the information tells them is going to make a difference. It doesn't matter what I say to them. It doesn't matter that I could show Drew Hansen. I could send him a video of myself doing a sub 1.5 second reload. It doesn't matter to him. That doesn't matter. None of these things matter. That there is tangible evidence that go against what they say, because what they have matters, and that's what people they are interacting with want to hear.
He has a base that is strong enough on its own to keep him in office, and that's the only thing. The only people he has to make happy is his base that continues to get him reelected.
Yeah.
Nope. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I started thinking about this. I was like,
that's
I need
what
to
I would
ask
say about
Dawn
that.
this, because I'm always uncomfortable when I start feeling comfortable with populist candidates. Right?
Yeah.
Because
I think that's a fair question.
people are dumb. That's why. A person is smart, as we remember Men in Black.
That's right.
So are we about to do it? Are we about to go into
sports? We're out here. Okay, so let's see here. What do I have for sports? The Hawks lost last week to the Tigers by a field goal. It was bullshit. Went into overtime and then
by field goal?
Yes. Went into overtime and then lost by a field goal. It was horrible.
BS.
Derrick Henry ran all over the Seahawks. I believe that he had 4 touchdowns. He had 47 fantasy points. I lost in 2 leagues because of Derrick. Yeah, it was horrible.
Lineup pulled up here.
Yeah, it was really bad. So the Seahawks lost last week. The Ducks are 3-0 against Fresno State, Ohio State, and Stony Brook. I did not get to watch the Stony Brook game last week because I was in Belfair. They play Arizona tonight.
I'm kind of partial to Stony Brook because I live right next door to it, and I live in Long Island.
Yeah, so I didn't get to watch that game, but they absolutely blew their shit in. It was beautiful.
Wow.
The score was like 47-3 or some shit. They absolutely
should be in a different division, man. You don't belong here.
When I first watched, it was very close, and I was a little bit concerned about that. But when I was checking later, they were absolutely smashing them. So I'm checking out the score right now.
Right meow. I'm excited. Who am I playing today?
Yeah, who are you playing this week in the league? Because I was saying earlier that I
Christian
have
Mingle 22. Is that
Chad?
Chad?
No, that is Joe.
It's Joe.
Yes.
Oh yeah, I can see it now.
Yeah,
that's awesome. Team Christian Mingle 22. I love that.
Let's see here.
I'm actually projected to win finally.
Come on, bitch.
Oh, he got hosed, buddy. Fucking Christian McCaffrey.
Oh my God!
Dude.
Yes,
he's out.
Yeah,
he's got 6 points when he's projected for 24. That kneecapped the hell out of him. So, sorry, not sorry, Joe.
Yeah, I had Christian McCaffrey in one of my other leagues. I took him with my first overall pick in the Bennett League. 6 points, and now he's going to be out for a few weeks. So we'll see what happens. Let's see. The Stony Brook score was 48-7.
48-7.
It was pretty savage. Yeah, we play Arizona today at 7:30. Like I said earlier, it's traditionally a difficult game, so we'll see what happens. We're ranked number 3 right now. I think it'll be okay. I have 1 win over 2 weeks in 4 different fantasy leagues. So there's that. CMC is injured. Christian McCaffrey's out for a couple of weeks. DJ Moore is also injured, who was one of my big guys. I have him in our league. I'm playing Chad this week. Chad has like the best team in the league.
He's fucking
so
vicious
far.
right now, dude.
Yeah. So I'm playing him this week. I have DJ Moore, who got like 20 points and then got injured. So which was good. I was really hoping for a touchdown on top of that because he got that like midway through the third quarter, he had 20 points. So I was really hoping that he could get a teeter before the end of the game. He then got hurt.
Tack one more on.
He then got hurt. Sam Darnold got another touchdown. So I think that it could have possibly been DJ Moore's if he was in the game.
So I don't want to like put you on the spot if you don't know. You're just kind of my go-to guy for this
what's
stuff.
up?
What happened to Christian McCaffrey? Because you said he's going to be out for a few weeks.
Hamstring.
Strain, torn.
He was running. And he jumped up and was grabbing his hamstring. So, they're not sure yet. It looks like possibly just a strain because they just said a few weeks. So I don't think that it's torn or anything like that. But yeah, it's gonna be a couple of weeks. He's been injured before and he was back super quick. So we'll see.
Pretty young guy.
Yes, he is. This is maybe his 4th year in the league. So him and I are probably about the same age.
You hate that after a while.
With the first year,
professional sports players, and you're like, man. They're my age.
4 years ago was the first year that the players in the NFL were the same age that I was, and I was like, I hate myself. Yeah. I hate myself, and I hate my life because I am just severely unsuccessful, and all these people are about to be drafted into the NFL, and that's it. I've wasted my entire life
where I stack up
because
now.
I'm not in the NFL. Yeah, it's pretty horrible.
So who are you playing in our league this week?
I'm playing Chad this week in our league. I'm playing Jordan in the Bennick League. I have a Dynasty League that I have going on. I'm playing, I don't remember, and then I am playing Shay in the other league.
Oh, snap.
I played Shay in the Dynasty League last week and got my ass kicked. I did want to remind everybody one last time. We talk about these things all the time. I share a lot of sports stuff on my Instagram, which is at alpaca_Donovan, and my Twitter is at Salt of the Street. Colin's at Big Bird Offie on both of those things. You can find all this information on our website, saltofthestreets.com. You can also find our Salt of the Streets Instagram at Salt of the Streets, our Facebook at Salt of the Streets. We also have our Patreon now, which is patreon.com/Salt of the Streets. You can go there and subscribe to us, become a Patreon for us. Thank you, everybody who's done that. You are all amazing. That is going to help us pay for our SoundCloud and our website and all of our general stuff and make more merch and do a lot of cool things. So I'm very excited for that. That's going to
build out the studio.
Yeah, it's going to be exactly. I am moving soon, so we are going to have to move studios. So that is going to help us pay for studio space, anything. It's going to help us do a lot of stuff. Subscription to different news networks and things like that. Sources that we can check out. So I think that's great. Just one note on that. If there's anything particular, I feel comfortable with this. We didn't ask about this. If there's anything in particular that someone wants, if you're like a $20 patron and you're like, I really would like for you guys to subscribe to this particular news source, let us know. Send us a message. I don't have any problem if you're like, I just became a patron for this level. We can obviously verify that. So if you have a really particular thing that you want that money to go to and it's feasible for us, I don't have any problem doing that.
Me neither.
So let us know, and that's very random, but it's just for some reason came into my head while we were talking about it.
It makes sense in the age of pay a la carte news.
Yeah.
When you have to put your dollars in to be generally informed,
right?
Or rely on sources that you may or may not be able to rely on, because they're the only ones doing it for free, relying solely on ad revenue. If you're looking for New York Times, Washington Post, I mean, our local paper,
Kitsap Sun,
which
is dog shit.
That is ridiculous. I'm not paying you money to read through all your grammar problems and spelling errors. Okay, that's bullshit. If I want to know what's going on, that's messed up. Find a new way to get a revenue stream. Let's just put it that way. But yeah, totally on board with that, and it makes sense to me.
Yep, past that, if you need a haircut, swellblended.com, get an appointment there. If you need a skateboard, go to Location Skate Shop in West Bremerton. If you're on Twitch, go to Lexi Kayo on Twitch, watch some streams there. And if you need a cake or just want to look at the beautiful cakes, go to Leggings and Aprons on Instagram. It's a beautiful time. That's everything, I believe. Is there anything else that you wanted to throw in sports this week? Any questions? Anything? Any quandaries?
Any quandaries? No. Unfortunately, my life's been rather chaotic recently, and I haven't been able to watch a lot of sports, but I'm 2 L's for the fantasy league right now, but it's early, so I'm not that concerned. The injuries are, they're coming in as they usually do in the beginning, and I've been relatively unaffected, so I'm very thankful for that. I will just say one thing. I am super proud of us because we're going to cut this show, and we're going to cut just on the wire. We're going to come right under 4 hours, baby. We've had a lot of heavy
beautiful
episodes
thing.
lately, guys, and we've just had a lot to talk about, I guess.
Yes. So with that, I will go to the store tomorrow and buy that book, and I will read it over the next 2 weeks. I'm sure it's not very long. It's probably wide-spaced, and it's probably big in print. So I will get that, and I will...
How many books can you get out of one administration?
At
least 4.
We've got one so far. It's only 8 months, so we'll see what we can do. It's going to be very interesting. Well, this is actually about the past one, right? And like the first days of the Biden administration.
Yeah, it's like the crossover, yeah.
Yeah, so this particular book is about the final days of the Trump administration, January 6th, and also the first days of the Biden administration. We are going to talk next episode about the subpoenas coming down.
Yes.
About January 6th. I have some clips
Steve
here.
Bannon.
I have some clips here that we didn't play that I will be releasing over the next week that I have clipped up, and we can kind of say something, in the description of like, this is why this matters. This is what this is referring to. So look for those on our Instagram over the next few weeks. You don't need, they're only like 2 minutes long, so I wouldn't worry about putting them on YouTube. But on
I think
YouTube,
we can put them on Patreon too.
Yeah, we can put them on our Patreon. On YouTube, we have been doing way more clips lately.
Oh yeah,
along with our
baby.
Instagram, we've been trying to do way more shorts, segments cut up, and also smaller segments and things like that. So definitely AUKUS will be a short that will go on Instagram next week and things like that. So look out for those things. With that, this is a closing line that we do every week or every episode. If you can tell me what show or movie this closing line came from, you will receive a free signed t-shirt that we will send to you. I will put some of these note cards in there if you want. I showed last time. I have this
stack
whole,
is growing.
This whole thing that we can send out. So if you guys want some of those, I'm also willing to just send them out an envelope. I don't know. I get weirdly obsessed with the things that I'm into, podcasts and stuff like that. So if I was listening to like a new podcast and someone was like, I'll send you some of my note cards if you want, I would be like, fucking send it.
Do it.
Yeah. So I know that might be weird. I don't know. I'm not trying to be like, I know people are really interested in the notes that I take and like I'm very popular, but that's just how I get about the things that I get into, you know? So, is there anything that you want to add to this show?
Nope. Other than I love all your faces. If you are wanting to introduce our show to your friends and it can seem like a very overbearing thing to try to introduce to people. A 4.5 hour long podcast is very scary to a lot of people. The shorts, the salty shorts, the clips on the YouTube is the way to introduce people to us. That's the gateway drug to Salt the Streets. Get out there, share the stuff, like this video, subscribe, just send it all out to all your friends and all your family, and boom. That's my last plug.
Boom.
These dogs are getting anxious.
No. And with that, the war that we fought is far from over. We live our lives in hiding.
America. I feel like that needs America. All right, guys. It's been real. Love you guys.
Thank you.